All right. Everybody ready? Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners meeting for January 21st, 2003. If everybody will stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Let us pray. Dear Father, thank you for your blessings, and let us live each day with compassion for those less fortunate. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item for the Commission's review is minutes of the meeting of January 14th, 2003.
Move approval.
Second. Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Next up, we don't have any proclamations or presentations tonight, but we do have a new staff member, and we also have some announcements. Mr. Anderson, do you want to introduce the new staff person?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm very pleased to introduce to you tonight Lynette Tribalzi, who a lot of you know. Lynette comes to us from downtown Main Street, Fort Pierce. So she knows a lot about this area. She's lived here all of her life. She has a young family. And we're really looking forward to working with her. We've needed a public information officer, and we think she's the one that fits the bill.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Next up is general public comment. If any person in the audience has any item they'd like to bring to the Commissioner's attention. Okay, we'll get back to the announcements. I see somebody coming up for the general public comment. Please come forward and state your name and your concern.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bob Bangert, and I'm representing the Conservation Alliance of St. Lucie County tonight. I was going to talk about Anderson's raise, but I think it's all right. Just double it from what it was. Now, my concern tonight is that the Conservation Alliance wholeheartedly agrees with staff on requesting that the Corps of Errors or engineers and the South Florida Mismanagement District to postpone the drawdown of Lake Toho at this time. Even with my older lack of memory, I can still remember it wasn't very long ago that they drew Lake Okeechobee down to a point where it went far beyond what they wanted it to, and it got down to 7 feet, and we had a disaster area. Plus all the water that they poured down into the St. Lucie River and the Caloosahatchee killed a lot of fish and caused a lot of lesions. It's very interesting with the district. I was reading one of their advertisements the other day on how they were getting so short on water and they want us to conserve water. And one of the main things they pointed out is that you people, when you're brushing your teeth, have got to turn off the water while you're brushing the teeth. Of course, at the same time, they'll pour billions of gallons of fresh water out to tide. Something's wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bangert.
Charles Grandy with the President's Council of Hutchison Island. A couple of brief comments, and I would like to speak for a moment on the county administrator compensation. You folks know a lot more than I do about how the county administrator should be compensated. I just wanted to add one piece of information for your consideration. About 2 months ago, I met with Mr. Bell and his agent at the EDC office. Mr. Bell told me emphatically that Tropicana would not expand in St. Lucie County unless he, Mr. Bell, was allowed to increase the cargo facility at the Port of Fort Pierce and actively service them. The same concern was echoed by Don Root. Our county administrator has worked out an expansion plan with Tropicana in spite of this problem. I think he's done really well, a really fine job, and I wanted you to be aware of these difficulties that you might not have heard of before. And using that to go into the next topic, so many of us have worked upwards of 2 years now to bring an upscale, environmentally friendly, revenue-generating mega-yacht facility to the port along the lines specified in the alternative proposals received by the county. We were a little surprised and disappointed by the tenor of Mr. McIntyre's letter of the 7th that implied the possibility of an agreement that might include a leaseback or some other arrangement that would reduce the size and scope of the upscale facility to make room for exactly the type of filthy, polluting economic disaster the owner has been threatening us with. We would be considering a reduction of almost 40% of the waterfront available for a mega yacht marina facility, including the elimination of the only berthing area suitable for the largest of these mega yachts and the elimination of the sailing center. We would also be looking at siting the servicing facility immediately next to a cargo facility that would have to become a container facility to survive. That would certainly disincentivize the servicing facility operator from keeping that area up to the standard we expect and the standard that we've seen them maintain in other locations. Please move forward with the plan for the entire 87 acres, and if the owner will not agree to what's clearly in the best interest of the community, in spite of the incredible profits that are offered to him, a taking is absolutely called for, and as we've seen, is actually in the owner's best interest. As for the questions raised by members of our state delegation, once Representative Maychek came and viewed the project and spoke to his local constituency, he immediately abandoned all opposition to the 87-acre plan, and I would expect Senator Pruitt to do the same. After all, his philosophical opposition to eminent domain kind of falls apart when one considers the takings of private property he championed for his failed toll bridge proposal and the takings of the homesteaded private property he's been advocating for the West Virginia corridor. Again, time is not on our side. Stalling can only increase the risk of compromising or losing the plan that means so very much to this entire community. Please move forward at your scheduled February meeting. That may be the only thing that will bring reality to this particular owner. Last, I want to urge you to do everything possible to try to acquire the Narrows land that's on tonight's schedule. This is probably the most environmentally fragile piece of land left on either of our barrier islands. There's absolutely no acreage on the west side of A1A, on the Narrows, and the land between A1A and the ocean is virtually all east of the coastal control line. I understand that there is either a sale pending or a developer who's considering a project here. Diana Waite has worked very, very hard shopping this piece to the Hope Sound and Wildlife Refuge and the Fish and Wildlife Service. They've indicated they would be interested in it if it had a willing seller. Anything that can be done to take this piece out of private hands and preserve it would be appreciated by the people on the island. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else have any concerns or questions or comments for the commission?
Good evening, Commissioner. My name is Herbert Beach. I live at 1012 Sega Avenue in White City. I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible. I'd like on the consent agenda, item 6B, I just want to reference that. People in the neighborhood out there hope you buy that piece of property and hope you put in a retention pond, as we've heard may be happening. But we would also ask of you to instruct your staff to keep us informed and updated on the progress of the project if it does go through. And number two, well, that's me. The other item is myself and some of the neighbors of neighboring streets request that you give in which she has a certain latitude already, give the MSBU coordinator for the Utilities Department authorization to map out and size water and sewer lines for the area of White City bounded by just one area of White City, bounded by Oleander on the east and Kidderman Road on the south, Palmetto Avenue on the west, and Midway Road on the north. We feel that this needs to be fast-tracked for the community by placing the master meters and water meters and flow valves at the lines on Oleander Avenue south of Sager, and I believe it's north of Kidderman or somewhere in the neighborhood of Kidderman Road. These existing lines belong now to the Port St. Lucie utility authorities, but we hope to get our water and sewage through St. Lucie County utilities. And this would be a way to do it. The other thing is, this is my personal thought, I would like to see the commissioners have the microphones upgraded so that the commissioners' voices are not lost when you turn away from the present microphones that you have, especially now that you're on TV. I watched the last program on TV, and I lost some of the words because some of the commissioners turned away from the mic and it didn't pick up. I'm not being critical, I just don't want to miss anything. And also, I found out myself even today that due to the road closing at Oleander and D. Gregorio Avenue, or D. Gregorio, whichever way you want to pronounce it, traffic is being detoured around at Farmers Market Road. And from at 7th Street, which is a dirt street, 2 lanes, is getting most of the overflow of traffic that is being detoured rather than people going to US 1, such as myself. I drove from Farmers Market to Canna Street or Canna Road, and the dust in that vicinity was of magnitude that I had to turn my wipers on to be able to keep seeing. And also that it's causing excessive dust condition to the residents and vehicles in that area. If you would ride along 7th Street and just take a look, you would shake your head like I did. And I would like to see that it's corrected by either water trucks wetting down the road or putting millings on that road. But something needs to be done now for those people in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Can we maybe get some information on how long that closure will be, how long the road will be closed, and get with Mr. Beach? Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Good evening. My name's Jeffrey Garland. I live on Tamron Drive, 24616. I'm here to speak about the public acquisition of land on North Hutchison Island, which
Mr.
is...
Garland, would you rather save it till we get to that item? Because I think are there others that would like to speak to that issue in the audience? I think there are a couple others anyway, and you can speak now, or we can wait until we get to that item.
We'll wait till the appropriate time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Seeing no one, we'll come back to the board, and the next item is we're going to do announcements now. Mr. Anderson, do you want to read into the record the announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The board will hold a workshop with the Investment Committee tomorrow at 2 p.m. in Conference Room 3. The board will hold a joint meeting with the St. Lucie County School Board tomorrow at 5 p.m. in Conference Room 3. There will be a joint meeting with St. Lucie County Board of County Commissioners, Martin County Board of County Commissioners on January 29, 2003 at 1 p.m. at Indian Riverside Park, second floor of Dockside Pavilion, 1707 Northeast Indian River Drive, Jensen Beach. The annual strategic planning session, which will be the unveiling of our 5-year budget, will be held on January 30th, 2003 in room 101 at 8 a.m. The board will hold a workshop with staff, the Fire District Constitutional Officers, and Thomas Lucido and Associates on February 20th, 2003 at 2 p.m. in Conference Room 3 to discuss the Administration Complex Campus Plan. That's the end of the announcements.
Thank you very much. We'll move on now to the consent agenda, and for those who don't have a copy of the agenda, the consent agenda are items that are basically housekeeping matters, usually are not very controversial, and there are several items, but we do allow commissioners to pull the items for separate vote or separate comment. So before we vote on the consent agenda, does any commissioner have requests to examine it individually or vote on it individually? Or is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. We'll move on now to community development. 5A, this is Resolution 03-002 regarding a mobile home. Mr. Murphy, are you taking this item?
Mr. Flores will start off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This agenda item is a petition of William Giraldo to define a Class A mobile home as a detached single-family dwelling unit in the agricultural one dwelling unit per 5-acre zoning district for 18.77 acres of property located on the west side of Brocksmith Road, approximately 0.6 mile north of Okeechobee Road. The petitioner is requesting authorization to install a new 28-foot by 76-foot mobile home meeting the definition of a Class A mobile home as set forth in the Land Development Code. Staff has reviewed the application and determined that the proposed mobile home complies with the objective standards of review as set forth in the Land Development Code. Staff is therefore recommending approval of Draft Resolution 03002, which would define a Class A mobile home as a detached single-family dwelling unit. As always, staff would like to include the staff report as a part of the official record.
Thank you very much. And for those new at these meetings, before we, I guess, get accused of flooding the community with mobile homes, Mr. McIntyre, would you kind of set forth the federal government's requirements of the way we review mobile home applications?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, the federal government has enacted regulations along with actually state governments that regulate mobile homes, and essentially those regulations, this is somewhat simplified, but if they have a seal, a HUD seal, they're basically allowed. The communities, the local communities, have the ability to regulate roofing and siding and overall aesthetic appearance so that they can look like a single-family home. But once they have that HUD seal, which essentially makes them legal under the federal guidelines, the counties really are restricted in regulating roofing and siding, and then primarily from an aesthetic appearance. It has to look like a single-family home. But the county cannot, nor could any city or other local government, reject just because it's a mobile home. There has to be some aesthetic reason.
So obviously the mobile home builders have, their lobby has been very strong in Tallahassee and Washington, and our hands are pretty much tied. So,
Sure.
Dennis, do you have more introduction on this issue, or are we ready to open a public hearing?
I don't believe I have any additional comments, so I think you're ready for the hearing.
Or are there any questions of staff from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on the legal parameters that were laid out by Mr. McIntyre, translate that then into the Land Development Code. Is this section of the code that was just referenced as it relates to Class A mobile home basically meet those aesthetic issues that Mr. McIntyre described?
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. We have certain screening, skirting, roofing material requirements that essentially means that the manufactured house has to look like a house. Standard shingles, no reflective sidings, none of the old 1950s era shiny skin kind of things counting as a mobile home. This has to look like a house.
Can't be an Airstream, in other words.
Cannot be an Airstream, no, sir.
Right, but the bottom line of the point I was trying to make is we're doing everything we can as per the law. I mean, we're going to the furthest extent we can to try and make it blend into the community and be aesthetically pleasing.
Good point. Anybody else have any comments or questions of staff before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on resolution number 03-002 regarding this particular mobile home classification. Does anybody wish to approach and discuss this item with the board? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Back to the board for
Mr. Chairman.
discussion or a vote. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions I'd like to ask Mr. Murphy. I can't tell on this map, where is the entrance? Where are they going to put a culvert in through the canal to make entrance into that piece of property, or is it off on the side?
It's my understanding that they'll be coming, see where the little magnifying glass is moving around right now?
Yes.
It should be somewhere in this vicinity here. They'll have their own separate culvert crossing across the canal through this area here.
Okay, and then I know you have attended meetings with me at North St. Lucie River District where they have brought up some concerns about allowing homes to be placed on their basically right-of-way,
Right.
which we know Brock-Smith Road is part of.
Yes.
Have they gotten clearance or approval from North St. Lucie River District? Because I thought we were going to try to work with them in that department.
Well, I think in this particular instance, this is a little different than most of the other concerns that the Water Control District has raised. There is actually some public right-of-way associated with Brock-Smith Road, some county road right-of-way. In this section, it appears that the wider portion of that right-of-way actually belongs to the Water Control District, and we may joint occupy some of their space. We've not been in direct contact with the Water Control District regarding this particular petition, or for that matter, developments along Brock-Smith itself. They will be doing, or this petitioner should it be approved, or whether they build a single-family house, this Class A or whatever, will likely do a perpendicular crossing to the canal, as opposed to what I understand the primary concern of the Water Control District being linear use of their canals, meaning, let's say this line up here where the magnifying glass is moving now, if that was a canal bank right-of-way and someone wanted to build a house where the magnifying glass is now, they would have to come down this path along drainage canal right-of-way, which is what the control district has expressed concern about in the past relative to maintenance and safety issues. So I don't see the same set of facts applying in this particular case, other than they will need a drainage control district permit to perpendicularly cross the canal. We, the county, and the Drainage Control District have broader issues dealing with the Brock-Smith Road corridor itself that we'll have to deal with at some point regarding maintenance and the surface conditions of the roadway.
Then I'll follow up with a question. Has the applicant been made aware that he has to go to North St. Lucie River District?
To the best of my knowledge, they're aware of that, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just
Yes,
to
sir.
follow up on that item, if this is approved and they move forward, certainly they would have to get, well, actually it should be a question, do they then have to get a driveway permit, a culvert permit, things of that nature from the county, which would then kick in the issues that Commissioner Hutchinson has raised, that they work with the Water Control District?
Yes, they'll need both. They'll need, in order to get the driveway permit from the county, they'll have to have proof of their permits from the Water Control District.
Very good, okay.
Mr. Chair. Yes, sir.
Has have any of the neighbors complained about this?
We've received one fax today from the Horns, which are the property owners, again referencing the aerial right where the magnifying glass is, the parcel to the south. I believe you all got copies of it. If you didn't, we can get some more up to you. And in some, they're concerned that the Class A mobile home is inappropriate for the area and are requesting that the board not approve it.
On that letter, if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in the second paragraph, there's a description about us putting the sign, notifying the community of this meeting, that we put that sign on the wrong property. Is there truth to that? And that it was subsequently taken down and basically laid on the side of the road is the description that the Horns give in their letter?
To the best of our information, the sign was placed somewhere along the property frontage here, and I don't have the exact location because we send it out to the road department. They go out and place it on there, but we specify exactly the frontage area where it has to be. We're not aware of it disappearing. The sign posting it's a form of required notice, but it's not a notice that if something happens to the sign that it causes the hearing process to be stopped or negated or declared invalid. I'm not aware of it being removed, but yeah.
Mr. Chair, so this is a single-family home, this homeowner, single-family homeowner? I mean, regular concrete
Yes,
block home?
this is a Class A, considered to be a Class A manufactured home, which essentially looks like any other ranch style.
That was the neighbor. Has he got it?
Oh, the neighbor? Let's find out. Well, that didn't really tell a whole lot. That looks like a white blob. The imagery, the resolution of this imagery is not that good. The indications are that that is a conventionally constructed home from their letter.
Looks like a missile silo, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not. I can't get any sharper imagery than that on that right now.
Okay, where are we going with this? This is,
Public comment.
I thought we'd open it up for public comment, and nobody commented, so we closed it. But if anybody wants to comment now, they can comment now. Well, here we have a taker. Yes, ma'am. Just identify yourself and...
Hi, my name is Rochelle Swartz from Central Homes, and just if you have any questions on the home, I'll be more than happy to answer it. You know,
You're representing the builder of the home?
yes.
Okay. The manufacturer of the home,
Yes.
not the owner of the home. Okay. Any questions for this lady?
In respects to the letter that you got, just so you guys know, that there's going to be a porch put on the front of it, and it is going to look just like what would be a modular home. It is a Class A mobile home, but it will look as a modular home because we will be putting a porch on the front. So there's really going to be, till you get down and picky, no difference in the way that the appearance is.
No difference in a modular home.
Yeah, in the
Right.
appearance. And a modular home is DCA approved, which I'm sure you all know.
I understand, unfortunately. Any other questions from the commission? Well, thank you, ma'am, and if there's no one else, will anybody else wish to address the board on the modular home? Seeing no one, we'll reclose the public hearing, back to the board. Discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move approval. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, we have one negative with Commissioner Bruin. Wish I could vote with you there, Commissioner Bruin.
Problem is, if we all did, we'd be in court.
Well, I know. That was a protest vote, wasn't it, Commissioner Bruin?
Yes.
Good for you. All right. Draft Ordinance 03-002, amending the St. Louis County Land Development Code regarding basically tow trucks in residential neighborhoods. And first we'll have some discussion up here. Mr. Murphy, are you taking this item?
I'll start it off with it,
Okay,
and
very
then we'll
good.
go back to the board, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in front of you have Draft Ordinance 03-002, which was formally presented to you as Draft Ordinance 02-025, meaning that it started last year, and we've now crossed calendar years, and we have to change the numbers on it. This particular ordinance would propose to amend the county's land development code to provide certain allowances for what we would call a Class A tow truck to be parked in residential districts. Currently, we do not allow commercial vehicles to be parked in residential zoning districts. The genesis of these regulations is a request that we received from the tow truck operators group here in the county who are on call on the sheriff's rotation list. They requested that they be allowed some allowances to take their vehicles home at night as opposed to having to go back to a compound or a central facility to retrieve them in the event that they received an emergency call for service. This matter was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission on August 29, 2002, at which time the Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend denial of Ordinance 02025. On October 15th, this board held its second of the 2 required public hearings on this matter. At that time, you continued the public hearing until tonight, January 21st, in order to allow staff time to go and ask the cities of Fort Pierce and Port St. Lucie a very simple question. Would you enact similar legislation in your community? And the results that we got back were a resounding no, they would not. The reason that we went to ask them is that we did not want the county, or the board did not want the county to become the parking lot, if you will, for
The unincorporated.
the unincorporated part of the county, excuse me, the unincorporated part of the county did not want to become the parking lot for tow truck service operators who'd be going into the cities. It was felt that if it was good enough for the county area, the unincorporated county area, it might as well be good enough to consider for the cities as well, too. The response, as I indicated, was negative from both communities, and we then are presenting it back to you tonight. Again, noting that the concerns raised about having the unincorporated county becoming the aforementioned parking area, staff recommends that the board not approve draft ordinance 03002, and that if the matter needs to be addressed in another way, it should be done in conformance with our existing regulations regarding the parking of commercial vehicles. If you have any particular questions.
Have we heard anything more from law enforcement? I think some of the explanation at the first meeting we had on this was that it was hard to, if they did abide by the law and parked in the yards rather than the homes, the response time to wrecks and breakdowns would be substantially lengthened, therefore creating a safety risk. But it didn't sound like law enforcement was really responding, because evidently they're not complying with the law presently, and that enables them to shorten their response time.
On meeting on another matter today with the sheriff and his chief deputy, county administrator and I and county attorney, we asked the same question, had anything come up regarding this matter, and the general response that we got back was, as they'd indicated in the past, they did not see any compelling urgency to enacting this regulation.
Okay. Any other questions of staff before we open the public hearing, or comments or discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to note at this point, as I noted the last time this item was before us, I do own a repair shop. I do not own or operate a tow truck, but perhaps in an excess of caution, to avoid the appearance of impropriety, I will be abstaining from discussion and or vote on this item.
Yes, ma'am. Seeing no other commission comment, we'll open the public hearing at this time on draft ordinance 03-002 regarding heavy vehicles in residential districts.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Lewis Powell. I represent the tow truck operators of St. Lucie County that respond for the rotation list for St. Lucie County Sheriff's Department. My health is kind of under the weather right now, so it's kind of going to be short and sweet. Basically, I come before you under the issue of safety. The code that we have now says that we can't take our trucks home to respond to incidents where people are disabled. Law enforcement calls us, in which, if we go by what the law says now, we would have to leave our trucks in the yard and then drive to them and get them back. The issue that I'm pushing with that is the safety concern. Now you're making, or a driver has to more or less push the response time, getting to his vehicle, then responding to it, keeping people further on the road. All the stuff that I presented to you before, I mean, I don't know how to keep expressing it to you. The only thing I did, I pulled up from the county code enforcement for the past 2 years. For 2002 fiscal year, they had a total of 149 violations for commercial vehicles. Of that, only 2 of them were tow trucks that were on a rotation list out of 2002. From 2001, they had a total of 99 violations, which 3 were known to be from a rotation company, which I've talked to all 3 of them drivers. They're not tow truck drivers anymore. The only other thing I could do to try to convince you is I had the tow truck drivers go to their neighbors in their neighborhoods, the people that they live around, that we've been bringing these trucks home for, well, I've been doing this for 17 years, and they haven't had a problem with it yet, and had them sign. Either they do or do not have a problem with them parking it. I have all the signatures here. I also picked up a couple signatures, or I had people sign, about 160 people sign signatures with their name and addresses on it, not just wanting to, or how would I say this, not from just amending this or changing this amendment here, but these are people that were affected. They were on the side of the road stranded with their families, waiting with 911 for the tow truck driver to get there. And as some people can concern, it's scary out there in the middle of the night. And having to wait that extra time, keeping law enforcement and the general public out there, it gets dangerous, it gets scary, and all the so on. I really don't have much more to say because, like I said, I've been saying it over and over and over again. And I just hope that we can come to a conclusion. If this doesn't get approved, what solution would you recommend so that everyone can stay safe? The issue was brought up before about being firefighters, staying at your offices. The impounds we have, they're not zoned for residential. I mean, you can't go in there and sleep with your trucks. These people have families. A lot of the drivers, we didn't bring the drivers tonight because they've been working hard on the tow and go and your DOI stuff, providing safe transportation for free so that people can get home free. I really don't have no more to say.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, yes.
question. So have you talked to the fire department about placing your trucks at the station so your people could drive to a local station and pick up their truck?
They're not responsible for it. Then they'd be liable because it's on their property. That's the same thing also with that was brought up about parking at shopping centers. We do the towaways for the shopping centers. They don't allow tractor trailers to park there. They don't allow people to sell their cars there because when it's on their property, they're liable for it. They don't want no part of it. That was one of the issues that were brought up about parking them, at a local shopping center or something like that. It all breaks down to liability. I've been told that these are ugly trucks. We've got $300,000 trucks that we put chrome on. We have people that are assigned these trucks, and they drive them every day, and they wax them every day. If they were ugly trucks, why would they do that?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a fire station in almost every neighborhood, and I don't know if you ever brought this to the fire board asking them if your employee could put the truck there, and then they could come get the truck when they get a call. And
I approached several stations on it, and because we were going to do it, some of the people that live on the beach, and they were told no because they would have to have access to our trucks, which means they would be liable for our trucks. We just can't park them in a parking spot, and then for some unforgotten reason, they're in the way. Now you have a truck. We've limited this down to a Class A tow truck. This will not include your medium duty and heavy duty for tractor trailers. Those will be kept in impounds. This is also for on-call drivers only. If they're not on call, they won't be taking their trucks home. We don't apply them as their personal vehicle. Also, in the ordinance that we amended or that we're trying to change here, we kept in mind the homeowners associations. Everyone has a say in it. If the county passes it, that doesn't mean, bam, the truck's in there. No. If a homeowner association don't want it, all they have to do is say, no, we don't want it. It's not there. Bottom line. The other counties, Martin County and New River County, has already passed this without their city's approval. I didn't go to the cities to try to get their approval because this is a county problem right now. I haven't been pursued by the city code enforcement with this problem. I'm trying to get my foot in the door right now with y'all, and once I get it in, I'm going to approach them. I mean, it's a safety issue. It's a big safety issue. A lot of people don't want them in their neighborhoods, which I completely agree. I mean, if I'm a retired person, I don't want it in my neighborhood, fine. But the majority of your drivers don't make enough money to live in these high-dollar areas. I mean, a driver makes $12,000, $15,000 a year. That's it. They do it because they love the job. And then to say, well, you can do the job. You don't make no money at it. There's no retirement in it. You go out and you might get ran down. But you can't take truck home. You can't do your job that you want to do, that you live to do. And that's basically all I'm proposing here is just helping us out, limiting the truck size, and keeping it accessible for the rotation list to take care of our law enforcement. It's not, passing this won't allow every tow truck to come in there, you're repossessing trucks or anything like this, because they don't respond to the law enforcement like we do. We're the ones that's called up when you got an accident at 25th and Virginia, and it's tied everything up, and they want it cleared now. And then you have to say, well, the company that's in the area, your driver that drives that particular truck to take care of that accident, he has to come from his home now. He has to fire his truck up. He has to let it warm up. Now he can respond to the accident. All this time, you're keeping other people in harm's way. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Any questions or?
No, sir. Your last presentation was very good, very articulate, and you made your points all very well. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Does anybody else have any, from the public, have any comments on this issue?
For the record, my name is John Farrick. To Commissioner Barnes and County Commissioners from the North Fork property owners, subject to tow trucks. The North Fork property owners previously supported the tow truck drivers being allowed to take their vehicles home on a rotation basis. We still support the tow truck drivers being able to take their vehicles home. Response time is critical in an accident to clear the highways. Response time is critical when you or a loved one are broken down. We question how many complaints are filed by residents due to tow trucks in the neighborhoods. Again, our code refers to weight on certain vehicles in neighborhoods. Are tow trucks above this weight? North Fork property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
For the record, my name is Hubbard Beach in White City. Speaking for myself and my family, we do not wish to see the tow trucks in our area or in our neighborhoods. The gentleman speaking for the tow truck drivers did ask that if you people were not to pass this tonight, what would they do? I've thought about this from the beginning. Why not give them a space, a bunk bed at the place of business where they could keep their truck in readiness and where they would be there to move that truck when it's ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on this issue? Seeing no one, we'll come back to the board for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
When this issue was initially brought forward to the board, I was tentatively supportive mainly because it was portrayed as it was again this evening a big safety issue. I think that's the exact quote that Mr. Powell used. And where I'm having difficulty is when our Sheriff's Department and our Fire District, both who are directly responsible for public safety, are coming forward saying there's not a problem. So the justification that you're giving for this change is that we've got an existing problem that needs to be improved for public safety, yet our public safety entities are telling us we don't have a problem. And that's where I'm uncomfortable with this proposal, because I think it certainly will have negative effects on neighborhoods. I think the phrase was also used about firing up the truck and warming it up. Well, I don't want that next to my house. I mean, if I'm sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning with my wife and child, I certainly don't want to have a tow truck fired up and warming up next door to me. I think there's certain locations that these should occur in, and I think it has a precedent for other types of commercial vehicles as well. So if I was convinced that there truly was a public safety concern as reported by either law enforcement or the fire district, I think then we'd have to balance that need with potential impacts to the neighborhood. But until that public safety issue is established as a concern, I don't want to, make this change that's going to have negative consequences to the neighborhood. So based on the information that we've gotten from the Sheriff's Department and the Fire District, I can't support this.
You certainly have some valid points. I personally have a little bit different opinion. I feel like in the real world, there's not a problem because our code either isn't being enforced or the drivers are basically parking at their homes now and respond so that the response times are within the time required. And I would hate to see death or injury because, or many deaths or injury because all of a sudden the drivers comply with the law, park in their yards, and then have to drive 15 minutes to the truck, warm it up, and then respond to somebody out on the highway or a wreck. So I certainly understand your concerns. I just feel like in the real world, what's going on right now is they're not complying with the law, and they're asking us to change the law to reflect the real world experience. Personally, I guess I'd live in a gated community if I expected my life to be sterile and my neighborhood to be sterile, and I don't want to live in that type of community. As with an ambulance going by or a police siren, I just take that as living in a little bit more urbanized society, and those are the prices you have to pay. Sometimes you're awakened by sirens, things like that. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think the law as it's drafted would allow the neighborhoods to basically keep them out if they didn't approve or if they had objections to them. And I think that's more than adequate to protect the individual neighborhoods that may decide that they really don't want the tow truck, they don't want to look at it, or they don't want to hear it or smell it or whatever. But I just have a hard time when I feel like I know in the real world why the response time is okay right now, not drafting or not passing an ordinance that reflects the real world and not our wishes that the tow trucks just go away. They're not just going to go away any more than the fire trucks and their sirens and the police vehicles and their sirens are. So how do the rest of you feel? Because we definitely need a consensus yes or no on this item.
Mr. Chairman, can I conclude?
Yes, sir.
You brought up an interesting point that was actually something I didn't note. And again, initially I was supportive. I had the impression that we were talking about a small number of vehicles and it was a public safety issue. And as we proceeded, we really realized it was a much broader issue. It related largely to convenience. But there was another issue that concerned me, is that it wasn't just a small number of vehicles. It opens it up to all companies that are on a rotational list, which then have multiple drivers, and basically all of those folks now fall into this category. So it's not 1, 2, or 3 vehicles in the entire unincorporated county. It's dozens of vehicles, throughout the county, if not more. So if you want to if you feel there is a problem to this current situation, then I think we need to look at some other solutions as opposed to opening up in this fashion, whether it's a conditional use approval for individual sites, whether it's a more finely crafted ordinance that deals only with a few vehicles as opposed to opening up. It can even be non-emergency related trips. Someone can be on the rotation list, be granted the ability to be at home with the vehicle, get a call that's non-emergency related, and now those fall under this category as well. How would we ever police that? So we're not just talking about a few trips. We're talking about opening up entirely for these tow trucks to, be doing business non-emergency or otherwise throughout the community.
You're right. It'd be terribly hard to police and distinguish between the two, and with the two cities refusing to allow it in the cities, it makes this very hard for us to pass. But I guess, fall on the side of I feel like I know what's going on out there, and I think that we need to recognize that, and even if the cities don't recognize that. But what about, I think we know where 2 of us stand. We need 3 to vote on this.
Mr. Chair, I'm more concerned about the 2 cities not passing it and the county getting the brunt of all the trucks now. They're not following the ordinance now, so no matter what we do, they probably still won't follow it. I mean, I guess we're not enforcing it, or we may be starting to enforce it. That's why they're coming here.
I hope if I'm broken down out there, they're not. I hope my driver's at home rather than having to drive 15 minutes to work.
But I'm concerned about 12 tow trucks in River Park, or
right. Sure.
I mean, if we're the only ones going to allow it, I just think we're going to be inundated with all these trucks, just right on the fringe of the cities.
Right. It's a hard question. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have to be in agreement with Commissioner Barnes and, Commissioner Coward and Brune. And part of it, again, goes back to the tow truck representatives. At our last meeting, I was under the impression that we had asked the cities to respond to this with the hope that you would be there stating your case to them also. So I'm a little disappointed that you didn't go to the city meetings when they had discussed it. And now you're saying you're going to go after we pass it. So I've got concerns if you didn't go the first time when we had asked on your behalf whether or not you're going to follow up with that one. Again, too, I'm not too keen on the idea of having tow trucks strictly in the unincorporated area. I don't think that's fair to the people that live within those areas. And as Commissioner Broom mentioned, River Park has very small lots, and those homes are very close together.
Okay. Commissioner Lewis is abstaining, so I think we have our majority consensus. So is there a motion on this item?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to
deny the ordinance or support staff recommendation?
I'm looking how the staff's got this written.
Right. Could it just be to deny the ordinance? That makes it more
Yes, sir.
understandable.
That would be just deny ordinance 03-002.
Right, to deny ordinance 03-002 with one stipulation on it. I hope that there will be other alternatives that we could possibly work on, such as what Commissioner Brune brought up about going to the fire board and asking their help if possible, and that again, you continue a relationship with both the fire department and the sheriff's department so that if there is a problem on safety, it's brought immediately back again.
Second.
Any discussion? Any further discussion? Yes,
Just
sir.
to note for the record that both Commissioner Byrd and I serve on the fire district, and I wholeheartedly agree. Let's explore that possibility and see if there's a way to work with the fire district. Again, I'm open to ideas. I just don't think the solution before us is truly a solution. I think it actually creates more problems.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Could you call the roll, please, ma'am?
Commissioner Coward,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brune,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Hutchison,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman.
No, ma'am. And so let's just explain the vote. The vote was to deny the ordinance, to turn down the ordinance.
Correct.
That would allow the tow trucks. Okay. We'll move on now to 5C, and this is change in zoning from residential single-family to agricultural. Dennis, is this your item?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Snee will be doing the presentation.
Okay.
Agenda item 5C is the petition of John Tenhove for a change in zoning from the RS2 residential single-family 2-dwelling unit per acre zoning district to the Ag 1 agricultural 1-dwelling unit per acre zoning district for a 4.99-acre tract of land located at 1475 Bennett Road. The future land use indicates a residential urban designation. The applicant has indicated a desire to continue a single-family residence but add in ancillary agricultural uses on the property. The subject property is surrounded to the northeast, south, and west with residential single-family 2-dwelling unit per acre zoning and residential urban land use. Staff's review determined that this petition does not conform with the standards of review as set forth in the Land Development Code. The proposed petition is not consistent with the purpose of the Ag 1 zoning district, which states that the purpose is to provide and protect an environment suitable for productive commercial agricultural, together with other uses as may be necessary to and compatible with productive agriculture surroundings. As this area is primarily single-family large lot development, we also determined that this petition was incompatible with the comprehensive plan, and therefore we are recommending denial of Resolution 02-302. At the November 21st, 2002 public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended by a vote of 7-0 also denial of this petition.
And of course, your report will be part of the record.
Yes, it will.
Okay. Any questions or comments by the board before we open up for public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I just need to put on the record that I did receive a phone call from a Mrs. Miller in regard to this.
Okay. Any other questions or comments by the board? Hearing none, we will open the public hearing on Resolution 02-302. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
Good evening.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. My name's Daniel Faircloth. I live at 1140 Bennett Road. I like to say that I do not know Mr. Tenhove. I've never met him. I have no ill will towards the gentleman. I just do not want the zoning changed. For the last 19 years, my family's lived at 1140 Bennett Road. It's a residential community, one way in, one way out, all dead-end streets. The only traffic we have in the community now is residents in the neighborhood. Pretty much most people know each other. We all have kids, family, live in the area, run up and down the streets playing in the evening, weekends and stuff. And I just feel that if this zoning is allowed to be changed, if it's changed once, I feel that we're pretty much giving up our right to say that who can come in and say we'll change the zoning again to something else. We don't need any businesses run out of a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Kathy Miller. On Sunday, Mr. Tenhove came to see me to discuss what we could do about the neighborhood. He bought the property, wanted to put his business there and have horses and whatever, which I already have, because in our neighborhood there's 6 local families that have lived there for 36 to 40 years. We make up 23-acre lots, which we maintain and pay taxes on for all these years. Our children, and I'm one of them, have built their homes next to their parents or grandparents 4 generations. All of our children play together, and we think because of our loyalty to St. Lucie County, we should have a say in our neighborhood. We don't mind people having livestock. I have livestock. Other people have livestock. What we don't want is to have a business run on our streets with trucks coming in and out. And I'm sorry that Mr. Stenhove bought the property thinking that he could run a business there. But what we would like is to keep our community the way it is and stay loyal to St. Lucie County and not have to sell our homes and move away like a lot of people have done to this town and left it like it is now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody else wish to address this item?
My name is John Tenhove. I'm the owner of the property. I've got 18 signatures from all the people surrounding me, everybody in the zoning area, except for the 7 houses owned on the corner. Mrs. Miller's family are the only ones against the order. I've spoke with all my neighbors on Sunday. They've all signed a petition. If you look at all the properties on Jenkins Road that back up to our property across the street, properties on the other side of 95, which are also in the zoning. The people on all around me, surrounding me, Peterson Road is the road behind me. Everybody agrees to the same thing. I purchased the property. It was advertised as agricultural land. When I look at the neighborhood and go over there, everybody pretty much is using it as agricultural land. She stated that she does have horses. Some other people do have livestock. Well, under residential zoning, nobody should be permitted to have livestock. So the zoning in the area is not being run as residential zoning, as everybody's saying it is. It's being used as agricultural, and there's a number of people in the area that wishes it would go back to agricultural. As far as a business, I'm a landscaper. Mrs. Muller has made comments to me that because I have Guatemalans working for me, she's at the safety of her grandkids, that they might rape them or they're in harm's way. I take that as an insult. 2 of the employees are related to me through marriage, and I feel that's not a good enough reason to tell me who I can and can't have to my house. I really don't know what else to say at this point. Besides, I do have signed statements by all the surrounding neighbors with the addresses and their signatures who are actual property owners. She did make a statement they own 23 acres. Well, they only have 7 homes, and each is on an acre, so how does that add up to 23 acres? She made a statement she's got 23 signatures. 23 signatures should be 23 homeowners, which they're not. If I went back to all the people that signed this and got everybody in their house to sign it, I could probably have 100 signatures. So I feel it should go by the actual owner of the property who should sign the deed, not everybody that lives in the house.
Thank you, sir. And if you want to turn that in, you can turn it into the clerk there.
Sir, before you leave the microphone, could I ask you one question? In reading back through the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes from November 21st, 2002, one of the P&Z board members asked you what your intention was on the property, and you said something that was unclear to me, and I would like to get some clarification. You said, and it references you as he, but it says he stated that he bought this property because of the visibility from I-95.
correct.
What does that mean? Are you going to put a sign up so that people driving by 95 know your business is there?
No, I've cleared the property to 95. I bought the 5 acres so I can put a garage up on 95 with my name of my business on it.
So you have a substantial sign then so that
Well,
people...
I don't have a sign. I want to put a garage up.
Yeah.
And on the back of the garage, I would want to put my sign on the back of the garage. If that's not permitted, that would be fine. But the sole purpose of purchasing the property is so I could have horses and my business and my family on the same property.
Okay, thank you. And if I can then relate that issue to our staff, when we discuss billboards or other signs of that nature, we only allow them in certain zoning districts, is my understanding?
That's correct.
Are they currently allowed in the RS2 zoning?
No, they're not.
And would they be allowed in AG1?
Yes, they would.
So by making the zoning change, not only are we dealing with compatibility issues, we're also opening up the door for a legally permitted billboard to be placed in the back end of this property facing I-95 to accomplish that visibility issue.
Can I make a statement towards that?
Certainly.
There already is such billboards on property surrounding me on 95. They're actual real billboards. I'm not asking to put a billboard. I was asking to put my garage up. If it was an issue that I couldn't hang a sign in the back of my garage, that would be fine with me.
Yeah, the point is, though, when we're asked to do a rezoning, we have to look at everything that's permitted within that zoning district, not what you tell us you plan to do tonight. But once we approve it, if we did, anything that's in our land development code that's an approved use in that zoning district is now something that we no longer have discretion of. So when we evaluate whether this zoning is appropriate with the neighborhood, we have to look at all the potential uses that you as a landowner would then be entitled to if we granted the zoning request.
Some of the uses that are in there are conditional uses under agricultural. They're not just listed because it's agriculture. You can use all uses. I have a list of some of the things, and they are
I'm
conditional.
familiar with it. Thank you.
I also have pictures of my property, and I have some pictures of the people complaining about that they don't want it. What
You're welcome to
using their
pass those
property
out.
looks like.
If you'll give them to Commissioner Brune, he'll pass them down. Does anybody else wish to address the board regarding this issue?
You're currently living on the property.
Yes, sir. Could you state your name and...
Yes, my name is Anthony Conan. I live at 1295 Bennett Road. And like I said, I have not personally met Mr. Tenho either, and I understand what he's trying to do. But I personally feel he went about it the wrong way. And he says he asked people for signatures. We're home 24 hours a day. My wife works out of the house. We've never been asked. We've got kids working there, or that are in our street all the time, running up and down. He wants to advertise on 95. He says there's billboards out there, but they're not advertising businesses in our neighborhood. I just don't want it. I mean, it's been residential. Let it stay residential. I've been to 3 of these meetings. Let's get it over with.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name's Lisa Faircloth, and I live at 1140 Bennett Road. I hate to be repetitive, but I felt like I needed to speak. I moved into the neighborhood in question in 1969 as a child. I enjoyed the safety of a quiet, family-oriented neighborhood, and as an adult, I chose to build my home in 1984, and I chose this neighborhood for the same reasons. I wanted to raise my children in the same quiet, family-oriented place. And I feel that if rezoning is permitted, I believe that, other businesses besides Mr. Tenhove's business is going to have the opportunity to change what I've always considered home for 34 years. Most of the homes in our neighborhood have children of all ages. As the gentleman right before me said, every evening and on weekends, our streets are busy with all of them at play. And as parents, we have felt safety in allowing our children to play freely, and now that the Baker business has arrived, I don't feel that safety any longer. And as more businesses could possibly move in, I feel that I would feel even less comfortable in my residential neighborhood, and I hope that you all see fit for us to keep it residential. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Amanda Conant, and I live at 1295.
Can you pull that microphone a little bit closer to
I
me?
missed your name.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am, and could you restate your name?
Amanda Conant at 1295 Bennett Road. As my husband said, we understand what he's trying to do. I respect the man for trying to make an honest living for his family. My concern is if it gets zoned agricultural, what happens if a year, 5 years from now, his business expands and he wants to bring more vehicles in or, like, say, have potted plants or something? Then the public's coming in to look at these things. The second thing is, what if he decides he wants to sell? Once it's zoned agricultural, anybody can come in there and do anything they want. And that's what I'm concerned about. Also, he was referring to the billboard. I'm not sure that I understood whether that would be allowed or not, but from 95 you can see all the way through his acreage to the back of his house. Even if I don't know how big a garage he's talking about, but with a sign, to me that would show this is where this business is located. He's on a dead-end road at the very end of our street. People would be coming off of 95 into our area looking for this business, and that's also a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify your question about the billboard, as I understood what staff said, is that it would not be allowed in the current zoning of RS2, but if we granted a rezoning to AG1, then it would be allowed. And he's concurring with that. So it's not currently allowed, but it would if we pass the zoning request. All right.
Any other member of the public wish to address this item?
My name's Teresa McSwain. I live at 6413 Peterson Road. I just built my house there about a year ago. I live that pie-shaped next to 95. I don't want this to go. I have the bus stop. It's at the corner of Bennett Road and Peterson, and I see these Baker's trucks driving through. They don't watch out for the children, and as everybody else said, all of our children play in the road. They ride their bikes. My kids cut through all the people's yards, and I just feel that if this petition was passed, that our children would be in danger. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else on this issue? Seeing no one, we'll come back to the board for questions, discussion, or a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question just to clarify. In minutes from the P&Z, last item on the agenda, on the minutes there, page 11 of the P&Z meeting, Mr. Tenhove made a statement, stated that he applied, paid, and was approved for a business permit for Baker's Lawn Care by the county, which states he may operate that business out of his home. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lewis, it's my understanding in checking with code enforcement today, that's the genesis of what brought this petition to us. It was not granted, meaning that we have not signed off on his zoning compliance. He may have got an occupational license, but it's kind of a two-step deal. You also have to get a zoning compliance, and that is what triggered the action that's before you, in essence, a code enforcement case. And we have not issued, again, checking with code enforcement this afternoon before tonight's meeting, we have not issued any zoning compliances for any lawn care businesses or any other businesses at that location.
So the lawn care business is currently not allowed as well as the chemical one?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to try and summarize my views on this, if I could, I think the applicant stated here this evening and in previous times that when he bought the property, it was sold to him as if it was an agricultural use, and he's concurring with that. And I guess the issue before us is how to best resolve that issue. In my opinion, trying to come in after the fact and rezone the property to conform with that perceived allowable use which then has negative consequences on all the existing neighbors who've been there for decades, is not the appropriate way. If you were sold a bill of goods that was improper, then I think your solution is to go back to that person who sold you that and try and get it rectified through those means, whether it's a civil matter or otherwise. But I think it's a terrible precedent for us to try and set to go back and rezone, properties because a realtor told somebody that they could do something that's not currently allowed. I don't think that's the right thing for us to do. This clearly is inappropriate in a residential area, and I'm not in favor of it.
Is that a motion?
If the board is ready for that, certainly. There's no further discussion. I'd move staff recommendation of denial on item 5C.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously to turn down the change in zoning. We'll move on to item number 6, road impact fee agreement, and who on staff is taking this? Ennis?
I am, sir.
All right.
Give me 1 second. Mr. Chairman, you have in front of you the request of the St. James Country Club, which is located in the city of Port St. Lucie, for a road impact fee credit agreement for the value of certain roadway work associated with the construction of Selvets Road from Peachtree Boulevard to the vicinity of Parkway Elementary School. By way of just a common geography description, Peachtree Boulevard is the short road that connects South 25th Street, St. James Drive, over to the current dead end of Selvets Road in northern Port St. Lucie. Bayshore Elementary, I'm sorry, not Bayshore. Parkway Elementary School is the one that's located adjacent to the turnpike right at the end of Manville Drive. St. James Country Club lies in between, and Selvets Road is proposed to be connected between those 2 points. St. James Country Club is located in the city of Port St. Lucie, and the requirement for the connection of that roadway segment, or the construction of that roadway segment, was imposed by the city as a part of the development order for that project. Consistent with the county's road impact fee regulations, the developers are requesting that they be granted a credit for the extra capacity that's provided as a part of that roadway. And basically in your package you have some traffic analysis reports that basically calculate out that of all the trips coming onto that roadway, there is excess capacity being generated as a result of that, and they are seeking a monetary value for that. The total estimated cost to construct that section of roadway is a little over $1 million. The applicants are coming in and requesting that they be given credit for 90% of that, or approximately $950,000. Staff, in reviewing the county's development codes and regulations regarding impact fee credits, specifically Section 1-17-33.1 of the Code of Ordinances, has determined that the request is consistent with our existing regulations and would therefore recommend that the board approve the requested agreement in the amount of $953,193. Representatives of the project are present tonight, and if you have any particular questions of either me or them, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
Okay, this is not a public hearing. Hopefully we can take care of it up here. Are there any questions of staff before a motion?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify for the record, as the commissioner who pulled this item several weeks ago, I want it known for the record the reason that was done was because of the fact that this was a late addition to the consent agenda for a $1 million item. I thought that was procedurally inappropriate to have an item of that magnitude come in at the last hour and be put on the consent agenda. So it was pulled primarily for procedural reasons. Since that time, we've had an opportunity. I've had an opportunity to talk with a representative from the developer as well as our staff to get details on this, and I'm comfortable that this is an appropriate thing to do at this time. So just wanted that to be noted for the record.
Okay. Are there any other comments or a motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I too separated pulling it from the agenda at that point in time. However, my concern was that I didn't feel that the requirements had been met, that this roadway was actually being constructed. However, it is very obviously under construction at this point in time, and I too have talked to representatives of actually I talked to someone who was involved in the traffic study, so I'm content to move forward. And if you're ready for a motion, I'd like to move approval.
Yes, ma'am, unless we have other questions. Sounds like we're ready.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. We'll move on now to the question of public acquisition of a piece of land on South Beach or South Hutchinson Island. known as the Narrows. Who's taking this item?
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a
Yes,
suggestion? We're about
Yes, sir.
to get into the next three items, all dealing with the Environmental Land Program. And what we don't have is an overview of the current program and existing funds. So before we're asked to make any specific position on any of these individual projects, could we have a brief overview by staff of the Environmental Land Program?
That's very good
Funds available.
because I noted, that, as you have mentioned in the past, we're getting down low on funds. A lot of our items on the agenda now will probably be choosing between parcels or at least setting priorities rather than in the past we pretty much move forward on every quality piece of property that had a willing seller and a reasonable price. Now that we're low on funds, we're going to have to start making choices and priorities. So that's a good request, and Mr. Murphy, can you honor that request?
We'll give you the short version of it real quickly here, Mr. Chairman. I believe last week you all were transmitted out a updated spreadsheet which gave a listing of the various projects and the amount of monies that we had allocated and spent out of the county's Environmental Lands Fund. In short, we started off with around $20 million in the bond issue that was approved, or the voter referendums that were approved a couple of years ago. To date, we have spent around $11 or $12 million. It's about $11.5 to $12 million, which includes acquisition and management costs. And we have committed slightly over $7 million or thereabouts. The net result of all this is that we are overcommitted in the fund, in the Environmental Lands Fund, by about, I believe it's $300,000, or somewhere in that range. Being overcommitted is not that bad in this particular instance because, one, we're not overcommitted that much, and two, we have allocated funds to a number of environmental lands projects, some of which probably will not come to closure because we will not reach price agreement, and of course we work under a willing seller program. If we've identified a parcel or a project area and a property owner comes back and says, I'm not interested in selling to you, we say thank you very much and we go on to the next one. So being a little bit over is not that bad. But we're over, which means that we have pretty much committed all of our available funds for the Environmental Lands Program as they exist today. Now, as you know, the County Environmental Lands Selection Committee has a subcommittee for finance. And that has met, or was meeting just prior before Christmas, and I believe there's another meeting getting scheduled for either, well, we're almost out of this month, so it'll probably be the first part of next month, to try and begin to identify additional funding resources that we can come in and work with. We are also in the process right now of completing our decennial review, if you will, of environmental lands in the county to see what inventory is left out there or what we may or may not want to be proceeding with future partnership programs with in terms of acquisition. And we also are looking at other alternatives to that of fee simple ownership, meaning if we can find another way to protect the property or to keep it in preservation status other than buying it outright, we're looking at those. So that in a nutshell is kind of where we are. We hope to have some more definitive information to you in terms of recommendations on the lands update and the financing over the next several months. But then I guess that kind of brings us back to the items that are before us this evening.
Yes, sir. While we're on that issue, though, the general issue of funding, I'm on the subcommittee, the finance committee, and to be honest with you, unless we have some staff help and direction, we're, I believe as a committee and individuals, really unable to put together a menu of funding sources that we could really present to the board. And I've asked the county administrator to put on for an item to discuss at our upcoming strategic planning meeting how we'll continue to fund the environmental lands program, because I think it's extremely important. If we want to get matching dollars from the state of Florida's recent bond program, we need to have a funding source locally. It may not be as big as the last referendum, the bond referendum that passed, but I believe we need to at least move forward with, in some measure, into the future, because we are running out of money. And when is the strategic planning meeting?
January 30th.
Okay, please, we had mentioned possibilities of impact fees, other funding sources. Please, if you all will put together a menu. I think you have the support of this board to continue the program in some manner. So really, I believe staff's going to have to take the initiative in coming up with a funding package.
Mr. Chairman, just one last comment, not to belabor this discussion too much further. I hope it'll come back because there's a lot of issues that are related to this that need further discussion. But one of the things that I found is that of the 6,000 acres of lands that have been acquired through this program, many of our residents don't know of the program or know of the lands that we've actually acquired. So it's perfect that our new public information officer is here to hear this, because I think we ought to be doing a better job of trying to get information out to the public about the resources that are in public ownership and available for public use.
Well, now, I'm sorry.
The North Savannas is a perfect example. North of Indrio, west of US 1, there's hundreds of acres that have been acquired. There's new boardwalks that are linking trails. There's, canoeing and bird watching and hiking and on down the list. There's another beautiful property down in Port St. Lucie that's been acquired. I went out there last weekend, not a soul out there. So I'm not sure that people are even aware that these, amenities exist.
Well, I think people in this community are still traveling to other areas like Ocala National Forest to experience these very things. I used to get in my car and go camping and go out of the county to enjoy these environmental lands. Now we have them in the county, but you're right, they're very underutilized, and now that we have a public TV channel, we ought to be introducing the public on video to each of our purchases and let them see how beautiful they are. There are a lot of people that can't really get up and go out there and hike them, but a video hike would be rewarding for a lot of people who are homebound. So I hope we can do that in the months to come. Anyway, any other discussion generally on the Environmental Lands Program before we talk about these parcels? Okay, Mr. Murphy, you have the first one is the Narrows, and I understand we got a letter indicating the seller is not a willing seller?
Yes, sir. And just for the record, let me explain briefly why we're here and what we're doing here. The county has received a development application for an area of Hutchinson Island, South Hutchinson Island, that is euphemistically referred to as the Narrows. And that is that part of South Hutchinson Island where you can almost literally put one hand out and touch the lagoon and put one hand out and touch the Indian River or the ocean at the same time. We've received an application for development in this area that would provide for 132 multifamily units in a series of buildings along approximately a 5,000 foot. Wow, that's a pretty good one. 5,000 foot stretch of beachfront. Under Section 604.01, Paragraph F of the County's Land Development Code, I'm required to bring to you any development applications that come in areas that are considered to be environmentally sensitive habitat. This being part of our identified environmental lands area is or qualifies under that definition. If the board determines that they wish to pursue an acquisition of this property, we then are required to suspend development review for a period of time so that we can hopefully work out a negotiated acquisition of this property. Now, that being said, as a part of our package to you, we've done some preliminary cost analysis of what it was going to take to acquire this piece. Using the property appraiser's values for the land and multiplying it by 1.2, which is our baseline property valuation estimate, we've estimated that the value of this property is somewhere slightly in excess of $8 million for tax purposes. That may or may not equal market value. Typically, market value is going to be a little bit higher. Under the best case scenario, we would be looking at, we the county would be looking at probably at least a 50% local match requirement to go in and buy this on a short-term basis, which we're talking around $4 million. Now, the property is part of the proposed expansion area for the Hobe Sound National Wildlife Area, and it is eligible for federal money to be acquired or to be used for its acquisition. The downside to that is it's been on that list for about 6 years, and I think only now is it beginning to come into some sort of view of some funding from the feds, and that's going to be in a very drib and drab kind of approach. I believe I was told it's only going to get, like, at best, $1 million a year. So if we're, again, around $8 million property appraised value for the property, not including market, and $1 million a year, it's going to take a while to get that. But as we said earlier in our comments on the overview, the environmental lands program that St. Lucie County works under is a voluntary program. If a property owner comes in and says, no, I'm not interested, we say thank you. This afternoon we received a fax from the local representative of the property owner, along with a fax from the property owner himself, and he didn't quite use the phrase it'll be a cold day, but he basically said, and I'm quoting from the letter here, I am not interested in selling said property or any part thereof to the county or any other governmental or public agency or body. That, on face, means that we have an unwilling seller, and then by definition, we would not be pursuing acquisition of this property. If the board wishes us to continue that, however, that is, of course, your call, and I sit here awaiting your direction.
It's the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
It seems like a fairly definitive answer from the landowner. I suggest we pass on this one at the moment.
And certainly it could be reconsidered at a later date, and certainly we can continue to support the federal government's acquisition efforts.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe we've already sent letters or passed resolutions supporting the federal government's acquiring this land as part of the Hobe Sound Refuge.
Yes, we have. And, Mr. Chairman, I would also note that even with the development application that we have under review, they are still subject to all of ours, meaning the counties, and applicable state and federal regulations regarding habitat and resource protection should they choose to develop the property.
Mr. Chairman, I think that language is pretty clear, but at the same time, the description that was provided by staff about maybe a 50-50 match, I think, is a little pessimistic. I think we've seen the environmental lands get a much better return, particularly when we have federal and state matching partners. So there may be an opportunity for us to get it at much less than 50%. It may be closer to 25 or 30. I know we're not in a position to move forward. We're certainly not going to be pushing forward with condemnation on this property. That's not my intent at all. But I would like to at least address the broader issue of whether we would support it if the property owner changed their mind as they proceed through, you know, the development review process, and maybe they run into hurdles they hadn't foreseen. Maybe their plan isn't viable, and they've got to come back at some point. I don't want staff to feel as if we're not going to consider a proposal if the property owner changes their mind. I think the support is there to look at different funding options and potentially preserve the property, but we're not going to move forward if we don't have a willing seller. I understand that. But I think our staff should know what our feeling is in case that position changes, as they have continuing dialogue with that individual and his representatives.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Certainly, if there's any, I mean, I think we're all interested in acquiring the property. Funding, of course, is a concern, but being that the seller is not willing, I'm not sure we can even address funding until we have a willing seller. But if he is a willing seller, then please bring it back to us.
We'll send a correspondence to him that if he changes his mind, we're here.
Very good. We'll move on to public acquisition on North Hutchinson Island, Chapman property. And Mr. Chapman, would you come forward and tell us if you're still a willing seller as of 8:30 tonight? I know you've been working on this several years, so.
Yes. Yes, we are still willing sellers. My name is John Chapman. I live at 8431 Immokalee Road in Fort Pierce. We'd be happy to sell it. I represent, actually, it is not my property, but I represent seven people that own it. And so I speak really for them. And I'm really here not to, more for clarification. This, I believe, has been on 2 different occasions before the Land Acquisition Review Committee. And the first time it was voted on unanimously to be put on the A list, and that was about at least 3 years ago. And then it was a second time put on the A list by the same committee about 18 months ago. So I look, we are interested in selling the property. I think it's one of the most beautiful beaches in South Florida. In fact, the Tribune, a while back ago, 7 or 8 years ago, had a big newspaper article saying that the North Beach was considered one of the greatest beaches in the United States. I think the main point about our beach, as opposed to unfortunately, the South Beach is on the North Beach of Fort Pierce. We have an accretion problem, and this property has gained approximately 8 to 10 feet a year for the last 40 some odd years. So
Not a problem, though. It continues to build bigger and bigger.
yeah, and it will continue. It's only going to get larger. I think it's a wonderful asset for all of us who live here in St. Lucie County, and really I'm just looking, if the county is interested, I'm looking for guidance, and there are also, I should add, some private individuals have indicated interest as well. But if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, I live not far from here, and I've been on the Land Acquisition Committee and heard the presentations. It is an absolutely beautiful piece of property. This is probably one of the most unusual and complex questions as far as public acquisition that I've faced in the years we've had the money to buy property. So my understanding, let me just summarize what I feel are the issues here, and correct me if I say anything wrong or feel free to add. There's a piece of property with 1,100 feet of beachfront.
I think it's around 1,200.
1,200
Yeah.
feet of beachfront. It's probably increased tenfold in size, at least since it was reserved for the homeowners on North Hutchinson Island for access and for view. The several lot owners across the street, and we can see the map there. Dennis, do you just want to run your pointer there along there? Those landowners were, I guess there was a deed restriction so that they could continue to see the ocean. Of course, back when the property was built on across the street, you could see the ocean. Of course, now it's too big. The piece of land, stretch of land, there are trees. You can't see the ocean anymore, but there's still that deed restriction.
And there are also public access points.
Public access points as well.
Yes.
It's been explained to us by the county attorney that because of that deed restriction, it is basically immune from condominiums or houses, etc., because it's been to court. It's actually been challenged by the previous owner or by the family in years past. It went to the Florida Supreme Court. Florida Supreme Court said you cannot build and obstruct the view in any way. So basically the property is sitting there 1,100 feet of beachfront, most beautiful beach in the world, or the 11th most beautiful according to that national survey, and yet it's only appraised at $30,000 for the entire piece. Is that correct?
I don't know what it's on the tax rolls at. I know
Tax
that-
appraised, I
yeah,
mean,
tax
not an appraisal fair market, but tax
fair
appraised.
market value would obviously be substantially more.
Right.
As
If it could
you-
be
you
developed,
all
it'd
just
be
talking about the Narrows, and this is certainly comparable property.
And to make matters more complex, and Mr. McIntyre, are you still here?
Yes, sir.
I can't see anymore now that I moved over here. I understand that there are actually negotiations with Mr. Chapman from at least two different parties or groups of parties who want to basically buy out the owner's interest across the street in their public view or in their ocean view, thereby presumably satisfying that restriction so that houses or other buildings could be built on the piece of property that we're talking about. I guess for the last couple of years, this board has been under the assumption that the property could never be developed because of the restrictions, and I don't know how a court would rule on it if it went to court, but evidently he's had two, and I've been contacted and have had conversations with two different parties who want to buy out those interests for the view because they belong only to the landowners across the street. The access is reserved for the whole community, but the view is restricted to those, I believe, 12, 13, 14 landowners. So it's extremely complex because you have a piece of property that has very low tax appraisal, would be a beautiful preserve area, could be developed into a beautiful park with parking lots, etc., except that the neighbors don't want parking lots in front of their homes, understandably so. So here we are, we got a heck of a piece of property with lots of complications, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I'm glad you came forward, though, and mentioned that the property is still for sale to the county. in days past, you said that you would sell it to us, I believe, for so many cents on the dollar and take
Based upon the assumption that the county owned it, and it was appraised at the highest and best use as if the county had owned it, based on the Ryan versus Manalapan decision, 1982 decision, which states that apparently the restrictions would be lifted if a public body owned the land.
That's a further complication, is that if we buy it, the restrictions disappear, and
The value goes up.
that's a sure thing. If the private people that are talking with you buy it, they think the restrictions would be lifted, that'd be up to a court if somebody challenged that, I guess. But what, just for the purpose of our discussion, what do you think a ballpark amount would be that the county would pay out of our Environmental Lands Fund if we were to
I would
buy
say
the piece of property?
Approximately $600,000 cash.
Okay. And the rest would be a charitable donation
Charitable
that
donation,
would go to the benefit of the landowner. Okay. There we have it. Please ask any questions, or let's talk about this.
I have one question for staff or Mr. Chapman. I had heard through the rumor mill that one of the private individuals had actually offered an amount similar to this to essentially turn it into a tax write-off and an upland mitigation site, thereby not requiring 1 penny of public dollar to be contributed towards ultimately preserving the site. Is there fact? Is that true?
That was the third offer we have had, yes.
Okay, and was that offer about in this range?
No, it wasn't quite that high, but it was substantial.
I'm just trying to decide, I'm trying to figure out why, with the complexities of this issue, the limitations of our environmental land program, if a private individual is offering near what you're trying to get, it doesn't cost the county a penny, why we wouldn't be going in that direction. And that's where I'm concerned, because the environmental land program is geared towards upland property that is vulnerable to development. This property, as has been noted by the chairman, has deed restrictions preventing units from being built at that time or on this property. So I'm not even sure it fits the specific criteria of endangered upland habitat. And then we have a private individual who's essentially offering you at or near what you want. That seems to me like the best solution for this parcel, because I would like to see it acquired, but I don't see that this is a vulnerable...
Well, that offer was made some time ago, and it was taken off the table, so it is no longer there. But we have had 3 offers on the property.
Right, but it was taken off the table because the 7 landowners didn't accept the offer, correct?
At that time, that's right.
That's why I'm trying to figure out why you didn't accept that offer. It's tax appraised at $30,000, and you're offered nearly $600,000, which is essentially what you're asking for tonight, and it was turned down.
I'm not asking for anything tonight. I'm asking for clarification. This has been before the county for some time, and I'm just asking for clarification if you wish to. And I'm here really to not to pitch you in any way, but to just say, get some clarification on what direction you want to go in, because otherwise we're going to go ahead and explore other alternatives. And I'm just representing them. I'm not here for any other purpose.
Well, that last avenue seems to be the one that is in the best interest of this community and would provide a substantial benefit to the landowners. I hope that that issue can be revisited.
The one thing that I probably should address is that the property was appraised without restrictions about 2 years ago at $2 million. It was an appraisal done by the county. And that was 2 years ago. The property at that time was appraised at being approximately 8 acres. It's now closer to 10 acres. It was appraised at having, I believe it was 320 feet approximately from the county right-of-way to the mean high water mark, and I understand it's now in excess of 400 feet of depth. So it is further addresses the accretion issue. But the other benefit to some of the 7 members would be that the balance would be a charitable contribution, the difference between the cash, and there would be some considerable tax advantages to doing it that way as opposed to just taking cash in.
How do you establish that tax advantage based on appraisal of without restrictions when there are, in fact, restrictions?
Well,
I guess we'll have to hire yet another attorney to give us advice on
That
that
you
one.
need a lawyer for. I'm just here to answer your
To me, the $2 million doesn't have much relevance because it's without
Well,
restrictions.
let me put it this way. If the county were to want to go out and buy 11 or 1,200 feet of prime oceanfront property, and you were addressing earlier, Mr. Coward, the need to address the narrows and be willing to pay $8 million to get a very narrow strip of property, which I'm sure is pristine and beautiful, and you felt that that was in the county's best interest, then I would submit that this is considerably less money and certainly would be every bit as much in the county's best interest.
Right. And if I could just briefly address that, I don't think it's a comparison. Maybe it is environmentally, but it's not a comparison when you look at existing development potential. The Narrows has the highest density allowed on South Hutchinson Island, as I believe. I think it's got the highest land use designation, RH. It's up to, 11 or 15 units per acre. So that's the development potential of that property versus yours, which is deed restricted. And as I understand from what I've heard tonight and in the past, you can't build a single residence there. So to say that those are comparable, it doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think conceivably you could. I mean, things have a way of changing. Not maybe in my lifetime, but another 20 years, if you continue to have accretion, I think that there probably are some smart attorneys around who could present a case at that point when you have 600 feet of depth or 700 feet of depth that something could or should be done.
Well, I want to make it abundantly clear. I do want to see the property preserved. I just would like to see the third-party entity step in and provide you and your 6 other partners with a substantial price to turn it into an upland habitat preserve, get mitigation credits, tax write-off, and cut a middle ground deal which allows you to make money and the public to benefit from this without any cost.
Well, we welcome, if such a party wants to step forward, we'll welcome it.
Mr. Chapman, Commissioner Coward, can I ask a couple questions of Mr. McIntyre, put you on the spot for a minute? I don't know, are you aware of the offers that have been made to the landowner to possibly buy out the restrictions that are in favor of the specific number of landowners?
I'm not aware of those.
Do you have any idea whether or not something like that could be accomplished legally? If the restrictions are in favor of, let's say, 12 people, and I don't know if it's 12 or 16 or 17, for their view of the ocean, can they give up that right in exchange for money or land or development interest? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I would think they could on an individual basis waive their right under the restrictive covenant, and then but even getting that, somebody would have to go back into court with all those waivers and attempt to convince a judge that the circumstances were changed and that the restrictive covenant that was, I guess, implemented in 1975 should be revoked because everybody's basically waived their rights. So I guess it's a possibility. It could happen.
Okay. I just brought that forward because I don't know if that will happen. I would assume then that'd be a declaratory judgment they would be asking for in order to build, so they wouldn't be.
Yes, sir. They would have to. That would be one way to do it. Somehow to amend the final judgment based on change of circumstances. Again, I think Mr. Chapman indicated himself that another possibility maybe in the years to come is somebody could try to use the accretion argument that when in 1975 there was X amount of feet and you could actually see the ocean. Now in the year 2020 the view is not there, so there's no reason for the restrictive covenant. Therefore the restrictive covenant is severe, it damages the property value, and it's not even appropriate in today's world. I mean, I guess that argument could be made and perhaps be successful.
Okay. Well, personally, I don't think the land is absolutely immune from development, but one of the problems I have with spending environmental lands money is the neighbors over there, I don't think any of them anywhere near the property would like to see parking lots and bathhouses, and when we buy beachfront, we generally try and open it up to the public because we're using the public's funds, and although I think the people on North Beach would like to see it preserved, I don't think they would like to see it open as a public park because they're very narrow streets, very quiet residential neighborhood. So it's kind of a quandary we find ourselves in. I'm wondering if Commissioner Coward mentioned the offer that evidently was made by a private landowner. Maybe the county could work with the private landowner or the private person who made that offer, and I don't know if the offer might get on the table again.
I don't know either.
Maybe we could at least open a line of communication with Mr. Chapman and that individual to find out if there was some small sum we could advance, and everybody would benefit. He would benefit from the tax write-off. Public would benefit from seeing a preserve, and a very small amount of the public's money would be used to purchase the property. But personally, I'm not sure I'd like to see a whole lot of the public's money used if we can't open it for recreation. So we do have a quandary. Anybody else have any good ideas?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Yeah, we're certainly going to allow the public to come forward. Anybody, pro or con, or just have an idea for us. This is a very unusual circumstance. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, my name is Shirley Burlingham, and I am the President of the North Beach Homeowners Association. I wish to address the issue of the Chapman Tract, or as I know it, the Putnam Chapman Tract. This section of North Beach has had quite a historical and colorful past. It has been in the courts and a judgment rendered. I am not sure just what stopped the area from development, the closing off of the view of the old-time residence to the west of the road, or a white beach mouse. I have heard several variations. Fort Pierce Shores is what I call a sleeper. It is quaint, small, lots still open, and narrow roads. It does not have all the public utilities available, but it's thinking about it. Young families have moved in, and there are children around. It is sandwiched in between the state park and the ocean. They fought for the closing of the entrance to the state park and the relocation of it out on A1A. Property was very inexpensive until a year or two ago. Somehow this area has not escaped the development craze. There are all kinds of offers coming in to purchase up all the remaining available lots. If I were younger, I'd love to live there too. I sympathize with the families there and commend them for their efforts to clean the area up and increase the value of their properties. I can understand their wishes to keep it simple, safe, and attractive. We, the North Beach Association, are ready to help them. The Sheriff's Department and the deputies are no stranger to this area. They are called constantly for loud parties on the beach, unlawful parking, break-ins to cars in the area, and rubbish left on the beach. The area has been a problem for many years. No parking signs have been installed along the east side of Atlantic Beach Drive. The Fort Pierce Yacht Club have adopted this area of the beach under an Adopt a Beach program. They patrol it for debris and garbage on a regular basis. If the property were purchased with funds that would allow it to stay as it is with no parking and only foot access, I believe the residents would accept it. This is their beach. They have to live with the quick rentals available in the motels and multi-rental units. These are mostly single people or surfers on vacation or school breaks. The property must be protected. We have approximately 32 beaches in St. Lucie County, all with no charge. We do not need another beach. If you were to say that you were purchasing this for conservation, I would applaud it, and the guarantee that it would stay that way. If the county purchased it for another use, I'm afraid the residents would object very strongly. We realize that funds are hard to find to protect lands for conservation, but if any area needs preserving, it is this. I will hope you will bear this in mind when making decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody else wish to address the board regarding this specific piece of property? Whether or not we should purchase it, how we should purchase it, or how we should preserve it, or... I see nobody coming forward. Okay, back to the board. I don't have a magic solution. I'm not sure any of you do. What direction should we give staff on this property?
Mr. Chairman, I'm like you, I don't have a magic solution to this one either, or the one prior to it in regards to the Narrows. But one of the things I'm really have been uncomfortable with on both of these as I read through them over the weekend is normally staff brings us ideas or recommendations or possibilities of matching grants, and these are two that didn't come with any of that. And it's for that reason that I don't know if we were to even come up with environmentally sensitive lands monies, where the other 50% would be coming from. And without that, I'm hesitant on either one of these to move forward with them. I mean, we all know our money's tight. I can only imagine what the federal and the state, as we're finding out, when it comes to conserving lands, their monies are coming from.
I think the point of the landowner was the match would essentially be his donation of appraised value, so that we would pay a small percentage of a fraction of the appraised value. The rest would be a donation. So we'd pick up 1,100 feet, some 12 acres of beachfront, beautiful beachfront property for a fraction of its value if it were able to be developed. But I certainly understand your concern about even with that small fraction, that adds up to, I believe the landowner said, approximately $600,000, and then we would spend that money and then fence it off from the public. So the only solution I have is to possibly talk to the landowner and try to ask him to maybe have a meeting with the person that made the offer of a private purchase to be used as a mitigation bank, and if we could greatly reduce our investment or the public's investment, then possibly we could create a preserve on a beautiful piece of property with very, very little public money and at least accomplish a conservation goal, although not a recreation goal. Do you all oppose? I mean, does anybody oppose that? I don't know what other action we could or should take on it.
Mr. Chairman, it seems to me your suggestion is probably the the best one I've heard this evening. As you said, if we're going to use public money to purchase beautiful beachfront, we're almost honor bound to open it to the public, and I don't think that's what was intended with this piece of property ever, judging by the previous requests of the folks across the street. They don't want parking lots, they don't want development. I don't think they want parking lots or bathhouses either. So I really think if we could kind of accomplish our aims of preserving it and also accomplish the owner's aims of getting partial value plus a tax contribution value, I think that would work well. And since this is so complicated, I don't know if that could be achieved, but it sounds to me like something worth pursuing. As far as our staff, I'm not sure if that's our bailiwick or not.
Right, and that's all these complications are probably why it took 2 years or more to come to the board. And you can see where we are. We're kind of where we were 2 years ago when we talked, Mr. Chapman. So we've given clear direction to staff. I don't know what it is, but they'll figure it out. No, certainly you can pursue any other offers that you have from private landowners, and we're probably not going to spend any money on appraisals or surveys, but we'll continue to talk with you and try to open a dialogue with the person who made the previous offer to purchase it as a preserve. And if you have a better offer out there, then that's your business. I guess that's what we've said. Is that all right? We'll move on to D, public acquisition of a parcel of land located along 10 Mile Creek.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is the third of the 3 items that we have tonight dealing with environmental lands. County's received a development application for a project that I know you all are interested in for the Walmart Regional Distribution Center. This site is located at the northeast corner of I-95 and the Florida Turnpike, across the turnpike from the landfill. It's the cross-hatched yellow area here that the little marker is going over into it. The parcel of land immediately to the north of that, and included in part of the active development site, is a portion of what we call 10 Mile East, which is an area that is identified as an FCT, Florida Communities Trust Environmental Lands Acquisition Application. It's approximately a 90-acre parcel in this area through here. This land has been identified for environmental acquisition, and as I said on the two previous items, because we've received a development application that impacts that area, we are required to come to you and seek direction as to whether or not you wish us to proceed with acquisition, accelerated acquisition, and suspend development review of this project. In conjunction with the Walmart Distribution Center, the parent property owner for about a 600-acre parcel in there is also submitting a subdivision plat, dividing the property up into a number of large tracts that will be later subdivided as further development applications come in. As a part of that development review process, there are setting aside this area through here where the marker is now going around for preservation, future conservation, future development restriction purposes. We are very early in the development review process for this particular parcel at this point. The purpose of today's discussion is to determine if you want us to pursue acquisition efforts on the area that is cross-hatched in yellow. That would be portions of the Walmart property. Noting the previous discussion about the distribution center, this has been kind of worked around carefully, the limitations and restrictions that exist on the property and the natural features that are there. We did not...
Can I stop you there? I'm completely confused.
Okay.
You said to pursue acquisition of the Walmart property?
That's the reason why we have to come here. It's a process thing. And because we have received a development application on these 23 acres right here, and this 4.9 acres right here.
Oh, I see. You said the yellow crosshatch, but
Right.
you're talking about the yellow within the pink.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry, not the entire Walmart.
I don't know if everybody can see that, but we're talking about a very small piece
Yes.
of the, quote, Walmart property, unquote.
Right. The overall parcel is somewhere in the vicinity of, I believe, 250 to 300 acres or something like that.
Well, where would the houses go or the development go that you've spoken of in the 90-acre tract outside of the Walmart
This
property?
piece right through here?
Right.
This is the piece that we're looking to acquire as a part of what we call the 10 Mile Creek East FCT acquisition project.
But you said that piece was going to already be preserved by a
That is,
developer.
it's proposed to be set aside for two reasons. One, there is a American bald eagle's nest located in this vicinity right through here, which will be restricted and preserved in accordance with the approved Fish and Wildlife Management Plan. Then there is some remainder land up in this area through here that is currently not subject to that specific a development restriction, but it is subject to certain development limitations. We would like to acquire this overall piece as a link in the entire 10 Mile Creek recreation trail. You may remember a parcel, or you know of a parcel that we're working on right now where this marker is located at Crossroads Park of Commerce, where there is the biking trail, which we're finalizing some discussions now with the Water Management District regarding the conservation easements on that property. And then immediately to the west of this, off the photo, is the 10 Mile Creek Attenuation Facility. And then to the east of it, we have additional properties on the North Fork, or 10 Mile Creek area, that we're looking to acquire, in essence to get a urban greenbelt riverine park running through the center part of St. Lucie County, which, as we discussed earlier and you pointed out earlier, these resources are there. We get the pieces of the puzzle all put together, we can have some very unique recreational and environmental resources for all of us to enjoy.
What's the danger of leaving it, I guess, to regulation to preserve it? I thought I heard you say a few minutes ago that the whole piece that we're talking about buying has to be, or is you're discussing leaving it in preservation as part of a development order.
when we get the overall plat for the Flagler property, and that's the owner of the property, when we get the overall plat for the property, we'll be addressing in specific deed restrictions the 750-foot Eagles ring in this area through here. That's pretty much going to be no man's land. You're not going to be allowed to do anything in there. The balance of the property will be otherwise developmentally restricted through upland preservation issues, habitat issues, or so forth.
Is this a smaller piece of the whole, or is this piece hanging out there by itself? I'm not.
It's a part of a whole.
All right.
Off the photo, coming down in this area through here and down yonder and a little bit over here in the area off the image, and down this way and coming down here towards Glades Cutoff and the Turnpike. That's the larger Flagler plat, and I think you all had copies of that in your agenda package to get an idea of how big this thing is.
All right. Well, they talking about developing this piece within the pink that we're talking about buying? Are they?
No, they are not talking about developing that.
Okay. Why would we buy it then? I mean, would we buy it so that we could use it and open it to the public? Is that the only reason, or are we afraid that it would be bulldozed and turned into concrete at some point?
Yes. Prior to the application coming in, we were pursuing the FCT program to acquire it, bring it into public ownership, protect it, keep it for recreational purposes. We now have an application for development on the property affecting that area, and that has necessitated coming to you tonight to ask specific direction. Do you want us to pursue acquisition, or do you want us to pursue, meaning going out and buying that remainder piece right now, or do you want us to pursue regulatory type actions that may work out a cashless transaction between the county and the property owner regarding the acquisition of that property?
Okay. But you're not talking about, just to clarify, you're talking about the landowner. If we don't buy it, the landowner would retain the ownership of the land. He would be restricted from building on it, but he would be the owner, and it basically wouldn't be open for public access and enjoyment.
Unless otherwise addressed through this platting process, yes, that possibility exists. The owner would just keep the land and...
But he couldn't develop it, but the public couldn't use it. Is that right?
He would not be able to develop within the Eagle Protection Area, but he might be able to come in and do something on what was left over. There's not a whole lot, but there's a little bit in there that could be, worked within a little, some minor type details.
Okay, I interrupted your presentation.
That's pretty much, it. It's complicated. I realize that. It's confusing. I realize that. But essentially, what we've got is we've got a development application affecting property that we've identified for acquisition, and the question before the board tonight is really, do we continue to proceed with the acquisition of it, meaning we buy the property, or do we try to work a deal through the development review process, which kind of gets us the property, gets the property protected, but maybe done in a cashless way, where there may be some considerations given for the remainder parcels. This is one of the properties that we have included in the allocated ESL funds, our portion of them. This was a project, or is a project, the 10 Mile Creek East project, that has received some FCT funding. We could go in and do it that way, or we could go in and try and work with the property owner. Okay. If you're looking for a recommendation at this point in time, my recommendation would be probably best deal in this case is try to work with the property owner to see if we can't come out with a cashless deal that gets us what we need and considers some of the things that they're talking about.
Okay, I wish you, I guess for the public's benefit, had a overall drawing of the North Fork and 10 Mile Creek to the north of that, and people could see where we're putting the puzzle together to preserve almost the entire North Fork and 10 Mile Creek area.
I can get it, but it'll take...
Well, you don't have to do it right now, but I guess I'm just making a point that, I have real strong feelings that however we do it, we need to, number one, preserve this, and number two, open it to the public, even if we have to spend public funds. This is, I think, an extremely important piece of the North Fork puzzle, and we have, and part of the greenway that would be accessible for hiking, biking. I'm very much in favor of, even if we have to spend some money to accomplish it, to buy this or open this as part of the greenway along the North Fork and 10 Mile Creek. but I guess you haven't really told us what you think we'd be expending in public dollars to survey, do appraisals.
No, sir, I didn't break that down in this particular piece.
So maybe you just want a general direction now, and then you could come back and tell us
Yeah,
more details.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe that we can probably accomplish the public purpose of protecting this property best through the development process than actual going out and buying it right now.
Okay. I don't just want to protect it, though. I want to open it.
Well,
for
that's
the
what, I
public
mean, I'm
use.
talking about getting into public ownership.
It's absolutely, I mean, in 20 years, people will thank us. This is an incredible piece of property. So, how does everybody feel about it?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. It says on the memo here, this parcel in question is currently the subject of an FCT grant application. Have we submitted a grant?
We've received it. We've received, that was one of the 4 or 5 that we submitted last year, and it was, I think, one of the 3 that were funded. Now, the FCT is only a partial funding. I mean, we have to have some local match monies into it, and like I said earlier, we have committed some of our environmental lands money to the overall project. It's not just this one piece. It's about 6 other pieces going downstream as well that are involved in that FCT application.
So if we don't have to spend money on this piece with that FCT grant, we can spend money on the next piece downstream, I think is what he's saying.
Okay, but I thought I must have been missing something, because if
Yeah.
we can't place a value, how do we apply for a grant? But I see
grant
what you
wasn't
mean. It's
just for this
flexible.
piece.
Okay.
Right, and I'm sorry on the value. I did not run a cost estimate on this particular parcel for tonight's discussion. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could you give us some insight on the FCT grant about the ability to modify that application if we, you know, you said it had multiple land ownership, and if we're able to work out a partnership with this landowner, can we retain the FCT grant for the remainder so that we can continue with this greenway system?
It's my understanding that we can, exactly as you just said in the last part of your comments there, that we would retain the grant. We picked up the piece as a part of the overall project.
Okay. The last issue that I want to just bring up as early as possible, obviously when we acquire these lands we have to be thinking about the cost of management thereafter. And when we're looking at a federally endangered species such as the bald eagle that was noted earlier, whose responsibility is it now to manage that area? Is that falling on Walmart, or is it the existing landowner FEC that has to maintain that area, and for what period of time?
It will not fall upon Walmart because Walmart will not be taking title to that particular land where the primary habitat preserve is.
Okay.
It's my understanding that the management of the Eagles area, the primary protection area, is the responsibility of the underlying property owner, whoever that may be. In this particular case, it's the current developer. In the event that that transfers to some other entity in the future, that entity would assume that responsibility.
Okay, and that's there's a cost associated with that management, and I want that cost to be built into our analysis as we're going to move forward. If we're going to acquire this property and assume that management cost, that needs to be built into the equation as we consider whether to move forward in this partnership. That's what I'm trying to get on the table, because in other cases we've actually had endowments set forward by landowners for mitigation that would allow us to draw interest off that for management purposes, such as we did at the Bluefield. In this instance, there's additional property that has development potential that has a value, and maybe that's where some of those trade-offs can be made. But I think the cost associated with management of that perpetual preserve has to be built into the equation.
Okay.
So, do you hear a consensus? It's getting late and I'm not sure. I think we all agree.
Well, what I'm hearing is basically work through the regulatory process through this and make sure that as we bring forward the final development plans for both the subdivision and the distribution center, we address the long-term management issues associated with the Eagle area and the disposition of the balance of this property.
Get us everything we want and everything the public wants without spending a penny. That's what we're
precisely
told.
what I understand.
Very good. All right.
Exactly what I said.
Okay, why don't we move on to, if we have no other questions or discussion, move on to North Point, City of Port St. Lucie, consent to the filing of a boundary plat. Explain this complicated venture for us.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the best way to explain this is if you would go to your agenda package and go to the second to last page in that agenda package. And representatives of the developer are here to answer any questions when I mess something up here. All right, what this second to last page is showing you is a boundary survey of what is called North Point. We know it as the western portion of the LTC Ranch DRI site. And the specific thing or specific issue that needs to be looked at, if you look at the survey here, you'll see a linear roadway, right-of-way, that begins up along Midway Road and terminates down at Glades Cutoff Road. That is a county right-of-way that was given to the county back around 1990 in consideration for future development issues that we're going to propose for the property. Its point of intersection with Midway Road, or Glades Cutoff Road, is roughly opposite where at one point in time the Palmer Expressway was to come across and connect into Glades Cutoff Road, those of you that remember that roadway corridor. Now I need to have you hop up a couple of pages, if you would, to the LTC Ranch DRI Master Plan. It's about 3 pages in front of the survey sheet. All right, this is the approved master plan for the LTC Ranch DRI, Development of Regional Impact. And it shows a slightly relocated roadway to the west of the original alignment that was shown in that survey, which was going to take that county arterial and move it so that it intersected, instead of with the Palmer Expressway alignment, it would now intersect with or come across at Commerce Center Drive, the entrance into the Reserve Commerce Park, the industrial park down by the Reserve. All right, now, recently, the property owners of the land now referred to as North Point have annexed this area into the city of Port St. Lucie. And on the 3 pages in front of the LTC Ranch DRI map, you will see a reduced version of the subdivision track plat for that particular area. They're not labeled in terms of numbers. If you just go to the 3 pages in front of that. The property owners, as a part of their annexation agreement with the city of Port St. Lucie, have agreed to tract out or plat out the large landholding into a series of large chunks of land, which will be further subdivided as the development proceeds. As a part of that process, the county, being a property owner to in the plat area, has to sign a consent form on the face of the plat, meaning that we agree to the platting of the property. Now, the current road right-of-way that we own passes through the middle of Tract B. It's not shown on the plat. Tract D, that is shown on the plat, is that which is the relocated road right-of-way.
You've completely lost.
I know. It loses me too.
No, I mean I don't even know which piece of paper you're on.
I don't have an overhead of it, and
Are we looking at sheet 2 of 3 or sheet 3 of 3?
you're on sheet 2 of 3 and
Thank
3 of 3. They're both the
Okay.
same thing. They're match line sheets.
All right, so we have a picture of a squiggly line, looks like a roadway, is that
That's
right?
the squiggly line. The squiggly
And-
line in question.
And which was the old one and which is the new one?
The old one is not shown on the subdivision plat. It is absorbed in. It is proposed to be absorbed into Tract B. Now, we have not received, and the applicant's agent will be commenting on that in a moment, we have not yet received the official plat vacation or right-of-way vacation application to basically relinquish our interest in that existing right-of-way and transfer it over to the new right-of-way or transfer that interest to the city of Port St. Lucie or another entity. However, because we are a property owner on the plat itself, we are required to sign off on the plat. Now, as you can see from our staff report, we've expressed some concern about a blanket sign-off on that without going through certain legal procedures and legal steps, and we recommend that there be some language added to the face of the plat to address that point. The applicant's agent has reviewed that language and feels that there may be another way to address this point, and I'm going to ask him to come up and
Well, not before I get in plain English from
that-
you. No, wait, you're a lawyer. You don't speak plain English. Dennis?
I would you and John.
Well, we try. It's hard, but please tell me what they're asking us to do in plain
They're
English.
asking us to sign off.
I don't understand.
They're asking us to sign off on the plat as a property owner involved in this so that they can go and record this and then subdivide it in the future.
So what are we giving up, and if we're giving anything up, what do we get in return?
Well, that's exactly what we wanted to do.
Do we own property?
We own property in there, and at this point, we're getting nothing in return. We want to make sure that we receive some process, or we go through the plat vacation process to make sure that the public's interests are being covered.
All right. It just, from a historical perspective, LTC Ranch was in the county.
Yes.
We spent an enormous amount of staff time and county commission time in working with the landowner to do a master plan.
Yes.
There were set-asides for recreation, for environmental lands. Basically, it was a master plan community. Now the proposal is just chop it up in little pieces and sell it to whoever wants to do whatever on the individual parcels.
Not quite.
Is it still a master plan community?
It still has a master plan associated with it. The master plan has been changed from what the county reviewed and what the city is in the process of finalizing out. It's my understanding that some of the basic tenets of the original plan are still in place. The applicant's representatives may be best to come up and explain that.
Are the environmental land areas still, the preservation areas still preserved, and the recreation areas still?
The applicant is best to discuss that one. The county was not a part of the review of the revised development plan. We've been working off the original plan from the mid-1990s. I understand it has been proposed for change as a part of its annexation into the city. We have not been part of those reviews.
All right, but Mr. McIntyre, we have something of value here, and we're being asked to give it away or sell it or trade it. What are we being asked to do?
Well, and ultimately, you may be asked to transfer the right-of-way to the city or to some other entity. I think tonight what you're being asked to do is to consent to the recording of a plat because you have an interest in the property that would be subject to the plat. You have the road right-of-way. You have arterial A is the county-owned right-of-way.
We own that.
You own
Have
that.
the
That was
title.
conveyed to the county. You have title to it. You're being asked to consent to the recordation of a plat so that the property owner can proceed with a subdivision in accordance with city-approved development plans, not county.
Has our staff or our attorney's office been given what the plans are, and if they meet in some way the spirit of what we had worked several years to plan?
I have not seen any development plans other than what's in the agenda package. Maybe Mr. Murphy has seen more detailed plans.
I've seen what's in the agenda package, and I know the gross number of units, and that's about it.
Okay, we're going to turn it over to you for your plain English presentation.
Thank you, Chairman Barnes. For the record, Bobby Klein, law firm of Dean, Mead, Minton & Klein. Just a point of clarification here. North Point LLC is the contract, I represent Golf One America, which is the contract purchaser from LTC Joint Venture. LTC Joint Venture is the property owner. We have the obligation to proceed forward and obtain certain approvals under that contract.
Do you have a contract for the whole property or just a chunk of it?
The entire property west of I-95. The development is going to be called North Point, and that is what you see. But right now, and I'm going to try to do this in plain English, and Commissioner Barnes, you can just hold up your hand if I go beyond plain English and stop me, and we'll go back and see what we can do about that. First of all, the DRI is still in effect. The development order that the county passed was adopted by the city of Port St. Lucie, and I wasn't involved in that process, Dennis, but I believe it was adopted pretty much substantially similar, if not exactly, to the development order that the county had approved for LTC, with maybe some modifications because the city was the entity as opposed to the county. Is that your understanding?
I have not seen the final adopted version of the city, but I imagine it's substantially the same.
They have adopted it. So the city is the local government that's in charge of administering the DRI. With regard to what we're doing here today, I think Mr. McIntyre was correct that we are asking for approval of the plat. We are not asking the county to give up anything. As far as I know, that there is no intention to eliminate those preserve areas or the things that were there, and those are part of the development order, and until a process were to be obtained through the city, through the Regional Planning Council, through the Department of Community Affairs, that's not going to be able to be modified, and I'm sure that the county would be notified of something like that anyway as an adjacent local government through the regional process, and I know that you have representatives on that board as well. What we're trying to do is record a plat, and Dennis was correct that the county does own an existing right-of-way. Because we're a planning area that the county owns, the county needs to consent to it. Now, I don't know if this helps at all. This is a drawing that shows the existing roadway, which is...
Can you, I don't think in TV land they can hear you, so
Okay.
can you just get closer to the mic?
Yeah, sure, I'll try. Then you can't see my picture.
Well, get the idea.
We have that map, so.
This is a sketch that we had done that shows the location of both roads. This is the lighter one, if you can see it,
Yeah.
is the county right-of-way. The darker one is what is Tract D on the plat. And in talking with your staff, one of the things that we did do that we had not done initially was match up the terminus on Midway Road, because we had them lying next to each other, and Dennis pointed out that they should match up with a planned road to the north. The other thing that we are doing is bringing it to the location at the southern end, which is matches up to Commerce Drive. So we're doing something that was contemplated but not ever done as part of the process. Now, that still leaves the county right-of-way in existence, and you are the property owner, and we need your consent on the plat. We are in the process of working through the final stages on preparing an abandonment application, and I'm sure that when we file that and we come before this board, we'll have plenty of discussion about the abandonment of that road. I would like to point out to you that the city of Port St. Lucie has required, among other things, two things in particular to this, has required that the new road be dedicated to the city of Port St. Lucie. It is totally within the city limits, and where the previous road was a county right-of-way, the city has now required, as part of all of our approvals so far, that it be dedicated to the city. The other thing is the city, in our annexation agreement, has the contractual obligation to seek and support with the owners of the property the abandonment of the existing right-of-way from the county. So we will be back, and we will have letters of support from the city requesting that the county abandon it. I know that Mr. Anderson and Mr. Cooper have had discussions on this, and I don't foresee any problems with that other than the normal course of process that you go through to abandon the property. The reason that I really want to speak to you, now let me just step back. Has that helped anybody or confused you more?
I still don't know what you're asking us to
Well,
do tonight. and
I'm getting
why
to that
would
point
we
now.
would do that before we have more information.
Well,
But go ahead.
because the plat has been approved by the city of Port St. Lucie. It was approved last week. And unfortunately, we were trying to get this before that date, but through whatever happens when agendas are prepared, we didn't get on the agenda list. So we are here now telling you that the city of Port St. Lucie has approved the plat that you have before you, that you are an owner of the property within the plat, and we're seeking your signature. Again, we're not asking you to give up anything. Now, what staff has suggested with this disclaimer...
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
can I stop you right there, Mr. Klein?
Yes, ma'am.
You're not asking us to give up anything tonight, but the way you just explained it, you're coming back to ask us to give up.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I also interject here, because I don't see why that's a problem. We have a large development of regional impact that was approved by this board. They have chosen to annex into the city of Fort Pierce as a part of the original DRI process.
St. Lucie.
I'm sorry. What did I say,
Port
Fort
St.
Pierce? I'm sorry, Port St. Lucie. As a part of that original DRI approval, they laid out this roadway. In the meantime, that master plan is being refined through the process of platting out individual lots. They're making some modifications to the roadway that provide better connectivity to the roads to the north and to the south. And all they're seeking is our participation to help make that happen, with the ability to have yet another final review after this meeting tonight. So I'm a little confused why we're putting so much effort in trying to block this, when I think they're actually just going through the development review process and actually helping connect roadways that we ultimately would like to see connected. And we're going to have time for staff to review.
I didn't hear anybody trying to block it. I heard us trying to find some information, and I still am not sure I have the information that
Okay. And in fairness to your staff, I think they're saying that they would like something added to the plat that says that by signing this, we're not consenting to the abandonment. This is not the abandonment, and I don't have a problem with that from a concept, because in fairness, when you look at the plat, you'll see that your road's not shown, but our new road is, and someone might get the idea that it was being abandoned. However, Mr. McIntyre and I have had some previous conversations on this, and I've also talked with Mr. Orr. The roadway was not dedicated to the county by plat. It was actually conveyed by deed, and I apologize, I didn't bring those deeds here, so that the act of platting will not, by in and of itself, under the laws of Florida, as I understand them, eliminate the county's right-of-way. The other thing is the language there refers to Track D. It says that you do not abandon Track D, and as I pointed out to Dennis before the meeting, Track D is actually not the property you own. Track D is the new road, so I wanted to be fair with you to tell you that what you're trying to do to protect yourself actually is not going to work, because if you adopt that language, you're saying what you didn't intend to do. So I want you to know that I'm coming up in front of you in a very frank and honest fashion to say, I understand what you're trying to do, you messed it up, and I'm going to fix it for you.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, if you look at your staff report, if you look at the agenda item, your staff recommends that the dedications of the plat, where you sign as the owner, say, by signing this, the county does not in any way indicate that this is an abandonment of our existing right-of-way, and that you have to go through that process. And I'm saying that makes sense, and I understand where they're coming from, and we agree with it. And the abandonment application will be submitted shortly. My problem is the fact that it is actually to the LTC joint venture for signature, and I've spoken with Mr. Orr today, and if you add that disclaimer to the plat, I've got to go back through site plan review, planning and zoning board, and the city council at Port St. Lucie just to have that language. And Dan, I think you're over there somewhere. I can't see you from this angle, but I believe that my understanding of the law is that a motion of this board to that effect is essentially a public record. A resolution to that effect is a public record, that people are on notice that that is the case. I will tell you from my perspective as a representative of the prospective owner of the property, we fully understand that, because like I said, we're working on the abandonment application right now. I just wanted to ask your indulgence that if you want to make this point clear to me, that it's not being abandoned, one, I do understand it already, and two, if you do it, please don't do it on the plat, because then I'm looking at a 2 to 3 month process to route this thing back around again.
Okay, my only concern is I don't really understand the law regarding plats. Our staff has told me they haven't gotten any information from you or the city that I was asking about, and so I personally, I'm going to take probably my lawyer's advice here. Mr. McIntyre, what are we being asked to do, and are we giving anything up tonight?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. I think what we can do is if the board's inclined to let the process go ahead, we can vote to consent to the recordation of the plat on condition that it's clear, and perhaps we can write a letter to Mr. Klein for the record that by consenting to the plat, the county's not abandoning the right-of-way or any of its rights to the right-of-way. And
we can do that rather than put this in
yes, sir,
some type of recorded instrument.
Yes, sir. I think as Mr. Klein indicated, for whatever reason, we perhaps shrewdly got title to the right-of-way by deed as opposed by plat, and so we own the right-of-way in fee simple.
And even after tonight, we own it in fee simple.
Yes, sir.
And the only concern I have is that if we have some say-so in the matter, that we can just make sure that we do everything we can to encourage quality development, and if it is, fine. The only concern I have is staff really doesn't know much about what's being proposed and ultimately what we're going to be asked to do. So how the rest of you feel? I think we can take care of this.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. If I just understood what Mr. Klein said, and if I'm reading this correctly, we're going to have to change the language in the recommendation. Is that what you were
That's what
saying,
Mr.
Klein?
McIntyre says. We just could do it by a letter, I guess,
Okay,
right?
fine, because the recommendation as listed here doesn't jive with what else we've been told.
If I could interrupt, I believe if you just, instead of talk about Track D, talk about the right-of-way owned by the county, that's sufficient. I would also suggest that if you write the letter, you not only write it to me, but write it to LTC Joint Venture as the owner of the property. And I'll certainly make sure it gets to them as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, this is going to be a test for everybody in the audience after this. Yes, sir.
I think it's pretty clear that the property was acquired through the development process. We didn't own this right away before the LTC ranch existed. Is that factual?
Yes, we did own it.
Oh, we
before
did?
LTC. Yes. We acquired this property back in, I'm going to say 1991.
Okay, I wasn't clear on that issue, but nonetheless, the intent of that initial right-of-way isn't being abandoned. We're simply modifying the alignment of the roadway, but we're still meeting the intent of moving traffic from north to south, from Glades Cutoff to Midway. So with this language that Mr. McIntyre recommended, which still gives us additional review before the abandonment is finalized, I'm perfectly comfortable moving forward at this time. So I'd make a motion, and if I can do this, essentially the recommendation from the attorney was to consent to the recordation on condition that the county is, it's noted on the record that the county is not abandoning the right-of-way at this time.
Was there anything else you recommended, Mr. McIntyre? Because I'm...
No, sir, essentially that's it. It's just to put it on the record that the county's not abandoning its right in the right-of-way and isn't consenting to the abandonment. That would need to come back in front of a public hearing, and you may choose not to abandon the right-of-way.
Okay, great. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Unanimous vote, Mr. Klein. Good work. All right. Human Resources. Is Doug still in the room for this one? Mr. Anderson, why do you deserve a raise, sir?
Mr. Chair, only you all can answer that.
He's speechless. All right, so we have, who's taking this? Is our... Yes, sir. Come forward. Doug, you'll have come a long way from those nights at the YMCA and where was it?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
On Wood Street. I'll never forget.
You spent nights at the Y because you couldn't afford your own apartment.
Correct. It was $1 a night.
You've come a long way.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, David Rodriguez, Human Resources Director. This item is an item for an increase to the salary of the county administrator. We are recommending that approval of a $10,000 increase in salary effective January the 20th of this year and an additional $10,000 increase effective October 1st.
Okay. That's, you left out the part of the salaries, or did you mention the salary survey that was, would you just explain briefly that procedure that we went through?
Yes, we had a salary survey done of comparable counties primarily, and basically what it was, the results were that the salary of our county administrator were significantly below their salaries. And as a result of that, the consulting firm made a number of recommendations, and what we're recommending today is a part of what they had recommended.
Okay, and it doesn't even really bring him up to, my understanding, up to a par with several of them.
That's correct, sir.
All right, and it doesn't take into consideration his achievements or work ethic or anything else. It's basically just comparing positions.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chairman, for
yes,
the record, could we also just clarify, I've had some correspondence from folks who expressed that, we need to take care of the rest of the county employees as well. So I want to have some discussion briefly on the fact that this board has supported a similar salary survey for all county employees and have begun to try and increase the salaries so that we can meet market rates for those. If you could just spend a few minutes on the broader topic of that effort.
Yes, we are in part of a multi-year process to adjust the salaries for our employees based upon a market-driven comparison that was done. And this study that was done here is pretty much in line with that study that was done before and will enable us to get our county administrator up to a reasonable level, but we are doing that for all of our employees.
Right. And I know we've also worked hand in hand with the new sheriff to make sure that we get our salaries up in law enforcement. I know working with Commissioner Brune on fire district, we've done the same with our fire and paramedics. I mean, so we're trying to bring up salaries to a more competitive level. And I think Mr. Anderson has done a terrific job. You mentioned his work ethic. I mean, there's not a time you come in this place, either early before 8 o'clock or after 5, where that man's not here working his heart off for this community. And I think if you look at results in terms of what you've accomplished, I can't even begin to list them. The thousands of jobs and other programs you've worked on, working directly with Fortune 500 companies and closing, $100 million deals. You've been a tremendous asset to St. Lucie County, and you need to be paid fairly. And I think the proposal that Mr. Rodriguez has brought forward accomplishes that goal.
Okay, so you're in favor of it?
I am.
Okay. Anybody else? I agree with you, Commissioner Coward. If you just took the position, as we found out, the position is comparable, and I can't imagine that the county administrators in these other counties that are making what we would be paying him, or that are making more, or that are making less, are producing what Mr. Anderson does. And I think it's wise to reward him. I really see this as a reward for his hard work. I know your salary survey is important and all that, but personally I see this as a reward for successful work, not just the fact that he's here 10 hours a day, but that he's getting something done and getting a lot of good things done. So that's the way I look at it, and I appreciate that we're being asked to do this before he's traveling around the country with job interviews or playing games like that. We need to pay him, and we need to keep him and let him know he's appreciated, and that's all I have to say. I hope we'll pass this. Anybody else?
A motion?
A motion would be great.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll, please, ma'am.
Commissioner Hutchison?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Coward?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Brune?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
That's but you're only day by day. You're you screw up tomorrow, you might be gone. So enjoy your salary while you're making it.
I understand.
Yeah, we love you. We think you're wonderful. Public Works County Attorney, who's this has already been. Let's have a really brief presentation here, because evidently we're passing a resolution to accomplish something that's already been accomplished. Who's taking this?
Mr. Chairman, Don West, for the record, Public Works Director. We talked last week about this issue, the Lake Toho project up in Osceola County, and just to real briefly refresh your memories, it's a lake restoration project that would require lowering the lake levels, which would in turn push more water into Lake Okeechobee. And of course, to drain down Lake Okeechobee, we have to discharge water out into the St. Lucie River estuary and the Caloosahatchee River on the west coast of Florida. So it does cause problems for the estuaries. What this resolution does is it asks the Water Management District and the Corps of Engineers to postpone that Lake Toho restoration project for another year, reconsider it for next year when we're not in such an excessive wet weather condition. There's about, I believe there's 8 counties now that are involved in the Lake Okeechobee Coalition, and they all support this idea. So for the record, we did want to ask the board to approve the resolution tonight to show our support for that.
Okay, but it's already been done, it's already been postponed, is that?
Yes, sir, that's correct. The Corps and the district have agreed to postpone until next year already.
Okay, that's good news. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion?
Wait, what is it? So move for what? For what? What is
Staff recommendation?
Which is
resolution. Approve the resolution.
We need to approve it even though the action's already been taken.
I guess just to join in.
Mr. Chairman, yes, Commissioner Coward. It's one of the requests for the meeting. They were going to continue as of Friday. They were going to have a meeting in February, and as of this afternoon, they've now changed it to the beginning of March. The coalition, the county coalition.
Okay.
They are asking.
Okay. I don't have a problem passing it, but I mean, the Water Management District's already taken action on this, so I'm not sure what we're going to accomplish. But if we need to clarify it for some future discussion that comes up on the matter, I'm certainly...
Well, I think there's that intent, and there's the intent on down the road. By doing this, we're also asking the state to make sure that they keep the money on the table when the time comes.
Okay. Very good.
Is there a motion, or did I already hear a motion?
There,
Motion and a second.
You're making a motion and a second?
there was
Okay,
one.
all right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Central Services Juvenile Dorm at the Rock Road facility. Does anybody have any objections to this? Have you been around and talked to all the commissioners?
I wasn't able to catch up with
Okay, well, why don't you briefly tell us what we're doing with this $180,000? I'm not sure if there's any controversy, but we'll see.
No.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Roger Shin, Central Services. We're requesting, or the sheriff's requested, a juvenile dorm at Rock Road. By building this juvenile dorm, we'll be able to free up a 24-bed dorm currently being used to house the juvenile inmates. And the sheriff has already solicited a proposal, $180,000 to build this juvenile dorm.
And where's that money coming from? In big, say it loudly.
Impact fees.
Impact
Public
fees.
buildings and correctional
All right.
facilities.
Very good. So it won't come out of property taxes or sales taxes. It'll come out of the fees that developers pay for new development. All right, great. Any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman, move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, ayes have it unanimously. I neglected to add to the consent agenda CA1. Do we have a motion on that?
Approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, ayes have it unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, before we go, could I just ask the staff, I know we're running late. Mr. Anderson, do you know what the current status is of the interlocal agreement with Port St. Lucie on having our commission meetings televised within the city limits? I've been getting a lot of inquiries about that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hutchinson. I have done a letter, it's going to be mailed out tomorrow, asking the city to begin airing our commission meetings immediately and give us a time period up to 90 days to get the interlocal agreement approved. A few days ago, the interlocal agreement was sent to the city of Port St. Lucie, but knowing that it has to go through the process of the city council and the county commission, I have a letter going to Don Cooper tomorrow morning asking that they begin airing the meetings immediately in lieu of the interlocal agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought when we put it off till January, we were getting all these housekeeping items accomplished. I don't want to reconsider the raise, but this is something that we should have taken care of before now. I mean, we did put it off several months, but anyway.
But we should be able
I can't
to
imagine
take
why-
care of the situation right away.
All right.
So we've missed 2 meetings,
I
I
know.
think.
It's not a big deal. They were boring anyway. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned.